Good afternoon. I am Mateo Valero, the chairman for the conference. So it's my real pleasure to be here. It's a very big honor to open the conference. And I am very happy, especially because all of you came to Barcelona after the bad days we have. So thank you very much for coming to Barcelona. You make Barcelona stronger than we were before the attacks. I think we prepare a very strong program for today and for tomorrow. Today is devoted to the very important topic, probably the most important topic in the world, cybersecurity, security in general. And for that we have two parts. The first one is a keynote given by Professor Silvio Micali. You know, it's Alan Turing Award, is the biggest award in computer science. And after that, we are going to have a panel about security. And after that, we are going to have an event devoted to the ACM fellows. Okay, we do normally, regularly when we meet in these conferences. So we all of you are invited. Okay. Tomorrow we will devote the day to high-performance computing. It's a very hot topic, you know, especially there is a competition worldwide to build exascale computer that execute very well artificial intelligence algorithms, many things. So for tomorrow, we are going to have another keynote given by Professor Patrick Jellick from Berkeley. And then we are going to have a panel session with leaders in the high-performance computing initiative worldwide to discuss the future of this hardware and software system. I mean, we also would like to thank, because we were collocating several events, so the ACM Women in Courage, and then the project from the European Union, EXDCI, Eurolab for HPC and HiPiC, okay? So thank you to all these projects for joining us. And I am very sure that you are dealing with very related topics, so take advantage of this meeting just to try to collaborate more in the future. Let me conclude acknowledging and thanking the very hard work that many people did. I am the chair, but I really didn't spend many times. So Fabrizio, my good friend Fabrizio, did the work for me, as you do many times. It's my pleasure. And your team. So without you and your team, we would not be here. And also the help we had at any moment from the ACM, from Wendy at the European level and your team, and for the person we have in our headquarters in the States, so the President, Vicky, you, Pat, you, Bobby, so thank you very much. Before I introduce Silvio, Professor Silvio Micali, let me give the floor to Vicky, the President of the ACM. Vicky.
Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Vicky Hansen. I am president of the ACM. I just want to say a couple words about ACM. ACM is the world's largest and oldest professional society serving computing professionals. We have about 100,000 members worldwide, and globally we actually serve nearly 3 million people through conferences, the digital library, webinars, and other activities. While ACM did originate in the US, I'd like to say that right now we have more members outside of North America than we have within North America. So truly we're becoming a global organization. And I'm very excited to be here for this Europe conference. It really shows the strengthening not only of ACM worldwide, but our the growing recognition of the work that Europe is doing in computing. So thank you, and I'm really glad to be here, and thank you, Matteo Valero, for all your hard work and the work of the ACM Europe Council in putting this event together. Thank you.
I realize I make the talk in 2 minutes, so you don't need to. Let's go directly to the program. So it's a great honor. I never introduced a person of so high level, so thank you for allowing me to introduce you. He's Professor Silvio Micali. He got the Turing Award in 2012, together with Sophie Gottweiser. And he is doing many contributions. Probably we can summarize the contribution, if you don't mind, just in order to be short, with the citation of the award, if you don't mind. Okay, so the full citation is, along with Sophie Gottweiser, for transformative work that led the complexity theoretical foundation for the science of cryptography, and in the process, pioneering new methods for efficient verification of mathematical proof in complexity theory. I mean, Silvio is an Alan Turing. He's European. Even you are not with us, but you are with us in your heart, in your brain. So he was born in Palermo, be careful. So he studied in Roma, and then you moved to Berkeley, and then you are in MIT, okay? The title of his lecture is ALGORAND, a New Distributed Ledger. So please start your lecture, and the audience is yours. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to share my thoughts on ALGORAND, but before I do that, let me start with some thanks. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank our association, the ACM. I cannot tell you how proud I am as an Italian to see the first pan-European meeting of ACM. When I was a student, not a graduate student at that time, in Rome, I was a mathematician, going to be a mathematician. I embraced computer science, but I know where to go and how much things have changed. So thank you very much for ACM. Thanks to Wendy and our new director, Rich. And thank you also to you for coming, and that is important. The importance of a European branch of ACM is growing all the time. And in particular, thank to Fabrizio to organize, among many others, this great event. Thanks to this wonderful city. What a city to choose to kick off our first pan-European meeting. It could not have been done better. And I'd like to thank in particular her adopted son, Matteo, for really welcoming us in such a fashion. It's really a pleasure to be here. And it's really the city symbolized with its openness, culture, and far-reaching roots of what we are going to become in Europe and the world. I'd like actually to thank Fun and Friendship. We had a small event with many of us together, and I could admire not in particular the spirit that animated all the participants at ACM. Let's just remember one thing, that a scientific community ceases to exist or ceases to be effective when its members no longer enjoy working together. So it's really Fun and Friendship are at the core of our mission, and I'm really to see how strong they are. And finally, thanks to life. In particular, I must say, I'm really ecstatic to be in this great city of Barcelona, and I really hope that we, individually, whatever challenges we encounter, will respond the same way that this great city has responded, with more fun, more friendship, and more life. All right, so what is the problem we are after? Okay, so we see that we are going to describe whatever happens in the internet, in 5 minutes of the internet, more or less, that's clock reminds, and there are somehow 5 players of different colors, and times a billion, more or less we are right, more or less. And so what do these people want to do is to somehow to transact. Take whatever transaction we have on the screen, multiply it by a billions, and we really have it. And so these transactions travel all over the place, over the internet, and so here they are. But all this movement creates a really gigantic dust. It's very hard to see what's happening. So let me lift the cloud for you and see what happens. The purple player up there sees a bunch of transactions, and so does the red player, and so on and so forth. And if you can distinguish, the quality of a video is not what it should be, but will compensate with imagination. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge, as good Albert reminded us. So these, whatever blocks of transaction we have seen in these 10 minutes, they're roughly the same, plus or minus 20%. It should be, right? But they're actually different. And so which view should we adopt? The one of the purple player or the red player, my own view? What do we need is a shared ledger, okay? So let me tell you really what that means. What is a shared ledger? It is a sequence of data organized in blocks. Block 1, block 2, block A, okay? And satisfying 3 basic properties. First of all, these blocks of data should be readable by all. How can we symbolize them? We put them in the sky. So here we are on the bottom, we look up in the sky, and there are all the first K blocks that everybody can see. The second property is that if you want to write a transaction, you should be able to put it up there. Otherwise, what is good to generate common knowledge? So any one of us, say, is here, puts a transaction, it will appear visible to all in block K plus 1. And the third property is that whatever is in the sky, these days we can reach to the skies, so we must be careful that this sequence of data cannot be changed, cannot be altered, cannot be deleted. Nothing, not even a single bit. So how do we symbolize them? By putting them in transparent, bulletproof glass blocks linked by a chain. So nobody can insert anything, nobody can access a block and erase anything at all. All right. So, okay, so let's assume that we have this bunch of blocks there in the sky, that everybody can write, everybody can read, nobody can change. What is it good for? Well, let me tell you, it is good for one thing, for sure, timestamping. You want to make sure that you knew something at a given point in time, you put it up there, everybody can see it, right? Rich put it there, at this time, appears in block. Think anybody else who has further thoughts on it is in a following block. That's good. But more general, that is good for notarization and storage, right? And you can think about, emerging economies, countries who don't have the infrastructure we enjoy is very more important, and even our own, to have a full transparency of what goes on that everybody can rely on. How about stock settlements? Well, so we know that every second we transaction millions of shares, and I'm so indecisive as I am, I transact and rebuy whatever I sold at a lower price usually, and so on and so forth. So very often we should ask, well, did you have the stocks you're actually selling? It wouldn't be better to linearize all this in an undisputable sequence. And that's actually what these blocks can do. But more in generally, they are going to put order into otherwise chaos. Contract signing. Well, okay, Wendy and I want to have agreed on already on a contract, and now we want to execute it. I'm going to say, Wendy, here is what I propose to do. You digitally sign the contract, no need to meet in person, right? She's in England, I'm in Cambridge, but US, and I'm going to say, please sign, and what I'll do, I'll digitally contract sign, and now we have an executed contract. But Wendy's going to say, Silvio, great idea, but I have a better one. Do you mind digitally sign first? Then you send it to me. Then I will countersign and send it to you, right? That is what we have to be suspicious about, and that's why we have escrow agents who, by the way, slow down the transaction. They want $1,000, and 2 days later, after describing what do we want, they can swap us a digitally signed contract to Wendy and give it to me, and vice versa, and give my copy, executed copy, to Wendy. So $2,000 later, 2 days later, but instead, here we can do it immediately, because I can sign right away. It doesn't matter who signs first, and say, I, Silvio, am bound to this contract if and only if my signature, Wendy's signature of the same contract appear in the same block. And I propagate it. And now I look, it is in the next block? Yes. It is together with Wendy's signature? Bingo, we have a digitally signed contract and the world knows it. We are both bound. If only my signature ends up there or only Wendy's signature ends up there, we already said what the rules are. If you are not both signature, I'm not bound, she's not bound. Wonderful, right? So no, we are not transforming a two-party transaction into a three-party transaction. We are not slowing down. We are not somehow paying a lot of money for these services. And that is a value. It is as if we have a common trusted party. Remember, I'm a cryptographer, right? I trust 5 people. You may be more optimistic than a cryptographer. You may trust 7 people, or you should anyway. So what is the chance that one of my 5 is in common with one of your 7? I would say very slim. Think about in a society in which we don't need this trusted party because this shared ledger acts as one de facto. Isn't this wonderful? And of course, this we can use for money because if every money we own is there and I want to say, sorry, I want to transfer now $10, I just write $10, say, to Chris, and then suddenly Chris' amount of money increases by 10, everybody sees has decreased by 10, and so on and so forth. Who needs change? Who needs cash anymore? Let me say, we could go on and on forever. Essentially, the shared ledger is good for everything. It cures the common cold. Look at that guy, how sad he is. He has a cold, poor guy. However, he goes to the shared ledger, his health is restored, his smile is back. It is a dream infrastructure, okay? The only question is how to implement it. So far it's an abstract structure. I want property 1, I want property 2, I mandate property 3. Easy to say, but how do we implement it? And there are, you may have heard, most of you have heard about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all other types of implementation, and that is one way to implement this structure. But I'd like to implement it in another way. And I'm going to describe briefly both approaches, and you see what the differences are. By the way, they require some very basic cryptographic tools, which were invented a long, long time ago, very mature tools. One is digital signatures, only you can sign, but everybody can verify what you sign. And random hashing, essentially, when you hash very quickly very long documents to 20 bytes, which essentially act as a 256 random bits, right, after compression. All right. So what is Bitcoin and all the other ones and derivative work? They work by eventual consensus and proof of work. Let me focus on proof of work. Proof of work is what it is. You want to prove that you have actually excavated a big tunnel, look and measure how much, a big hole I've made, right? That is essentially in one picture what proof of work is. So let me tell you now a little bit about eventual consensus. So here is the block 1, the first block of transaction. When you design a ledger, you can actually write the rules and you describe these are the first block of transactions, right? So for instance, if it were about money, all of us say we give each other $100 million and we put our public keys and the fact that we own that much in the block 1. Block 1 is shared by definition. Anybody who knows the system knows block 1. What you have to work is to decide block 2, because after we start transacting, right, I see one block, you see another block, who wins? And proof of work is he or she who first solves a very big riddle has the right to publish his or her block, okay? So as long as the riddle is so hard that you expect one winner to solve a riddle in every 10 minutes, this confusion somehow, this dust never rises, because only one person will speak at every 10 minutes, has the attention of the world, and has the right to append to the sequence of block, the block he or she has seen. Is this clear roughly how it works? We want to slow down time. How do we slow down time? Obliging you to do a very, very, very long computation. Whoever finishes first, we expect to have one winner every 10 minutes, so very few times we are going to have winners next to each other, has the right to publish, and then we disseminate that block and life goes on, right? It's a brilliant idea. However, there is room for improvements. Else, I wouldn't try to improve anything over here. I would declare victory already. So, let's see what in action, right? So we want to publish the second block, so every one of us tries to work very hard to solve these riddles and says, enough for now, let's freeze it here. And first of all, what we have generated doesn't really look like a blockchain. It looks to me much more a block forest, right? What happened? Because, you see, this riddle is timed to be so hard that we expect one solver of a riddle every 10 minutes. However, because we all work independently, we expect that sometimes we are going to have two solvers roughly at the same time. So now you have two blocks who pretend to be, I'm the next block, I'm the next block. And this can happen actually on top of these blocks too. And so that's why you get somehow a forest, right? Is when you say is a Poisson process, right? So whenever there is a lamp which is going to stop working at some, say within a year, very often you have to change all lamps in the house because you install them roughly at the same time, and more or less you have many, many lamps to change and not only one. That's the same phenomenon. However, if you keep on digging, and if you keep on digging, you can see that all this ambiguity, all this forest is pushed towards the edge of a chain. And what you expose is a bit cleaner chain. And here I'm saying a little bit optimistically that this block now is considered stable. And if I wait a little bit more, maybe this other one is considered stable. Of course, you have to be deep in the chain, say 10, 20 deep, to start considering that the trouble is far away from you, and so whatever you see, everybody else sees, right? So that is a proof of work, roughly, right? So you try to solve a riddle, you consume a lot of computation for doing it, roughly you expect that one winner every 10 minutes, occasionally you have a simultaneous winner and you have a fork, and this fork can generate a little forest, but sooner or later the dust settle and the first elements of the chain are, as I described, a linear chains of blocks. Okay, that's why I say eventual consensus, because when you see a block, you cannot count on it right away. You have to wait that either the block disappear, poor you, if a payment to you was in that block, or if it doesn't disappear and it's deep enough, then you start thinking, I think I will get paid now, right? That is roughly the way it works. All right, details on demand. So in summary, what is a Bitcoin idea? Bitcoin really is a brilliant idea. So there are, once upon a time, a brilliant idea, and here Mr. and Mrs. V. Nakamoto's, the alleged inventor, mysterious inventor of this scheme, had a really great idea. So you communicate by gossiping as a very distributed way, whatever the blocks. The main idea is to have consensus by proof of work. And then the main assumption is that you have an honest majority of computing powers that tries to generate these blocks. Okay, what are the problems? Otherwise, no problems, no lecture, right? All right. One is that this process is extremely wasteful. So Bitcoin, nobody knows how many real users are present in Bitcoin. Let's say there are 100,000. They may look a million, but because everybody has 10 keys to hide his or an identity so that you cannot correlate to whatever you spend. And so, but they absorb as much electricity right now for, say, 100,000 users as the country of Iceland. And if this scales, it's going to be even more. It's going to devour tremendous amount of electricity. And you say, well, isn't this innate? Is not this natural? After all, when we used to dig for gold, we generated a big hole, which is invisible. That is a mine with a big hole generated. Well, but not the fact that we always digged for gold this way doesn't mean that we must continue to do the same wasteful process in the future. The second thing is that remember that these people who solve a riddle is not me. Why? I have a laptop. I could try to solve a riddle. But guess what? Because the riddle is so hard and so many people try to solve it, I must pay the electrical bill for my laptop for sure. And maybe if I win, I get compensated for at least the money I spent plus a little bit of incentive, right? But you know, in expectation, I'm going to lose money. because of the bill, I pay for sure, and times the probability that I win in expectation I'm actually losing money. So I don't do it. So who can expect to do money? People who have a specialized hardware, not mine who has PowerPoint. Forget PowerPoint, take it out. Take it out Word, take it out anything. So what's remaining is a machine to try to solve riddles. That's it. Day in and day out. It does nothing else. Specialized machine. And that is not enough. You must get together with other like-minded people around the world who own this machine, and you create consortia. Bottom line, if you have an exogenous concentration of power, because all of us are users who like to spend some money and own a laptop, but whoever who somehow solves a riddle and has the right to publish the next page in the ledger is not us, is these so-called miners. And it turns out that 5 consortia of some miners will decide what gets published in the world paper. And in particular, who gets paid, by whom. So I never seen in the history of the world that the money supply in the world is controlled by 5 entities. So that I find it a little bit dangerous. Moreover, these miners are actually, believe it or not, poor, because they must be compensated for at least all of the electricity they spent so far, anytime they solve a riddle and propose a block. But with the money is very marginal profits, and they invest in new hardware, so they are very, very poor. Moreover, everybody knows what they are, who they are and where they are. Why? Because at least the electrical companies know so much electricity is drawn from the network. That's where they are, right? And very often they are in faraway locations where there are any jurisdiction you know of does not apply there. They are outside, unreachable by the long hand of the law. It doesn't get there. And they are known, low profit. That's a recipe for major disaster. Then suddenly this system doesn't scale, right? Just imagine you want to amplify by number 10. Now you need the 10 islands, then 100 islands. Then you need a continental Europe, all electricity consumed to do this. Where does it stop? And suddenly this ambiguity, I find it very nerve-wrenching. I'm a very anxious person. I see a payment in a block. Is it going to get paid? Am I going to get paid? Now my block disappears, then appears another time. Who needs this extra aggravation? Right? Financial institutions have already enough risk as it is. They don't need this ambiguity on top of it. And further, when you feel secure, how deep you should be for considering being safe. Then must mean that you must wait hours, because a block is every minute, but if you need to be 10 deep, now is 100 minutes that you have to wait to feel secure. And so it's actually a long way to safety. All right. So if I look at this, I see, you know what, it's a great system, and it is, but we can do better, okay? So let me tell you what my proposal, which is rather different. My proposal, I called it ALGORAND, and is effortless one-by-one Byzantine Agreement. Okay, let's divide and conquer. Let me explain a few pieces at a time. What is effortless one-by-one mean? Okay. Here is the first block. Remember, that is for free for everybody. The problem is, what about the successive blocks? And here is a favor, the universal symbol of lightness and no work at all. And as the favor gently goes down, these blocks gently unfold in their chain. Okay? That's how it works. Wait a minute. What happened to forks? Forests? What happened to proof of work? Guess what? There is no proof of work here. There is no forks. The system works with very limited amount of computation, and it does produce what you were promised, a linear fork. And any time that a new block appears, is never going to disappear. You can bet on it and be safe. As soon as you see the block, you can actually rely on it instantaneously. All right, that's a claim. We have to make good on the claim. How about Byzantine Agreement? That is the other, Byzantine Agreement is a great idea of the 80s. Another Turing Award winner, Leslie Lamport, was one of the founder of the inventors of Byzantine Agreement. And is what? Is a communication protocol that when the majority of the players are honest guarantees the following two fundamental properties. First property is agreement. What does that mean? Assume you have here a bunch of players. Some of them are bad. You can guess who is bad in this picture. And there are a few devils here and there. And each one of them, the honest people, have a value, V1, V2, Vn. Now, Byzantine Agreement means that at the end of the conversation, all the honest people, we don't care about the dishonest, they can think whatever they want, they agree on the same value. Right? And what is the consistency property guarantee? Well, this value cannot be arbitrary. Why? Because of the consistency property. Should the honest people start with the same value, then not only they have to agree on the same value, but actually on the value they started with, right? The difficulty is to guarantee agreement, always agree on the same thing, and consistency. If you started with the same thing, agree on that. Because otherwise, I have a wonderful zero-time Byzantine Agreement protocol. No matter what your initial input is, output zero. Every honest people does it like you, everybody output zero. We satisfy agreement. But we don't satisfy consistency, do we? Because if I started somehow, everybody started with 100, we should agree on 100, not on zero. Right? And because you don't know what the other people have in their mind at the beginning of the protocol, to guarantee both is not clear. However, such protocols have existence since the 80s. Very revolutionary time, by the way, in computer science. And he says, what are the challenges if you want to use this old protocol in ALGORAND? The protocol is that Byzantine Agreement is wonderful, but is very, very slow. All applications I've seen involved 12 players. 12 players? We have billions of players that we want to put in this ledger. What are I going to do with 12 players? Moreover, the players ought to be fixed and known in advance. Really? In the internet? Give me a break. You know, the internet, there are new users coming in online all the time. You can even predict who they are. So it really is too slow and doesn't apply. So we must do something to fix this problem. Okay, but while we fix the problems, here is the summary. We communicate in the same by gossiping, propagating messages over the network. The main idea is to rely on Byzantine Agreement, but we have to modify it to make it scalable. And the main assumption is that the majority of the money in the system is in honest hands. Okay? And we shall say a bit more later on. So what are the technical advantages? First of all, forget absorbing as much energy as Europe, okay? The computation required in ALGORAND is trivial. What you have to do is a few additions, counting a few things, compare two integers, digitally sign a message, verify a message. Nothing. Then the system is truly decentralized. It's not we, the users, and then separately from us, the miners. Who decides what gets published in the common ledger? No. It's we, the users, is a single class of citizen. We are all in. We don't need anybody else. Thank you very much. Then finality of payments. Can ALGORAND fork, and Bitcoin and etc., they fork all the time or very often, and says, we too can fork, but the probability 10 to the minus 18. So what does this mean? Well, let me tell you what 10 to the 18 means. Well, you know what 10 to 18 means, but let me tell you in vernacular terms. 10 to the 18 is, according to our friends the physicists, co-located here in Barcelona just next door, is the number of seconds from the Big Bang until now. So if you have produced a block every second, which is excellent block generation, you had to wait to see a fork the age of the universe. You know, I think I can live with that. Okay, so I think that probability is enough. So essentially that's what I said. About scalability. This thing scale because it is really, as long as you cannot generate more blocks that you can actually propagate them, right? Because everybody ought to know what the blocks are. If the bottleneck is the time that it takes to propagate a block. Whatever control you add on top of it is peanuts, so you really produce a block as fast as you can in a truly distributed manner by propagating it around. And finally, security. And the system is secure against a bad adversary. How bad? very bad. But fear not, we are here to defend you, okay? So, what do I mean by very bad? I believe the following, that the adversary can corrupt anybody he wants, provided he cannot corrupt, say, a third of the internet. That's a pretty safe assumption. And he can do so instantaneously. If I want to corrupt anybody of you, at just point, corrupt. Now you work for me, you become a zombie, you do what I want, okay? In reality, we can do this, but it's not quite instantaneous, right? You have to convince you, click please on this link, do this and that, I put a Trojan horse somewhere, right? So, forget it, instantaneous. Moreover, after I can perfectly coordinate all the zombies that I've corrupted so far, and then I can see the messages before anybody else, etc., etc., etc. The only thing this very bad guy cannot do is to forge digital signatures. But for that, nobody can do it. Not even a national state can forge your digital signature. So I believe we should be so adversarial in analyzing a public ledger. Because if our commerce, our money, our progress in society, our transparency, the way society works, we put on a ledger, guess what? This ledger is going to be attacked. And it's not going to be the friendly attacks we are used to. We are going to be attacked by very serious people and very well-financed people as well. Okay, so now I told you all the good things, it has all these good things, ALGORAND, but what is the architecture? The architecture, I must confess, is not the simplest. So there are all these blocks, and they are on shaky foundation until I put the last keystone to solidify all this. So in my balance of the lecture, I'd love to communicate what this architecture is at very high level. If I finish on time, and if there is some curiosity, I can perhaps show you a little piece how I implement that, the easiest possible piece, okay? So what I want to do is to give you the global idea, how does this work, and perhaps a token, just go into one block, say, show us what one block works. All right, so let me tell you the high-level structure. Here are all the players, say all the players of internet. These are billions of users, right? And they have some bad people, a minority. Although that's I believe, why a minority? Because I believe that the majority of society is honest, and I can prove it. Proof, colon. A society exists. I mean, in this society, our European world, the North American counterparts, they will not work if the majority of the people were made them criminals. Nobody respects the law, the majority don't respect the law. This is not true. It is, so there is a good majority in society. The only point is, you don't know who is honest and who isn't. Okay, there are billions of players, and so what happens? Remember that is the highest level of infrastructure, so I can resort to magic to convey the zest of the idea. And so what is it? There is a magic step in which, among all these billions of users, one user is selected at random. And here it is. In this case, notice, random selected user happen to be honest, but needs not to be. Moreover, the identity of this user is also by magic known to the entire humanity, okay? Good. Step one, selected a random user. It could be bad, it could be good. Good in this specific example. And what does he or she do? Is in charge of producing the next block. We have seen block B1, BR. I want to do block BR+1. And then what you do after you collect all the transactions, which are not, that are new transactions, are valid, you put it in a block, and then you propagate the block, right, to the rest of humanity. And that's what happens. After this block has been propagated, what happens? Another piece of magic. 1,000 users, say, are randomly selected among all the billions of users out there. And their identity are known to everybody by magic. Very good. So what do we do with this committee, which is a very small committee, 1,000? What do they do is that they run Byzantine Agreement on the block proposed by the first guy. Why? Because, remember, the first person who proposes the block may be good, may be bad. If it is good, it's going to say the same thing to everybody. And if you remember, property 1 of Byzantine Agreement, property 2, means that the entire humanity will agree on the block proposed, on that block proposed. But if it's bad and propagates one block to the left, a block to the right, a block to the north, a block to the different block to the south, never mind. Because the Byzantine Agreement will ensure that everybody will agree on the same block, which in this case is going to be the empty block. By the way, the empty block is always valid because a block with no transaction is always valid, right? Because by definition, a transaction doesn't exist, it doesn't violate anything. All right, so then what happens? Now, everybody runs the Byzantine Agreement. With some people have output a block. You know that this block, by property of Byzantine Agreement, is the same for all good people. And if you are a member of this committee, you digitally sign the block. And then you propagate your digital signature. Now, I'm a spectator, I'm not part of the committee, but I see one block digitally signed by, say, 750 people of the 1,000 people committee. What I conclude? That is the right block. That is the block it was agreed upon, right? Because I know that the entire good people that ought to be majority among the 1,000 committee agreed on this block as evidenced by 750 signatures which are testified that this block is good. Bingo, I'm done. I know that this is the block. All right? That is the general architecture, right? Once more, one random person is selected and proposes a block. Second, 1,000 people are randomly selected and they say, let's agree on the block proposed. Of course, everybody starts with the block they heard from that person. Whether or not the block they started with are different, they agree on the same block, they digitally sign it, and the block which has sufficiently many signatures is the block that is going to be next on the ledger. Is this clear, roughly how it works? All right. So you can see that if the selection of a single person, it is easy to do, takes no time, but is not much computation. What other computation is needed is, well, maybe this Byzantine Agreement between 1,000 people is complex. If it is not, it's a very easy protocol. Right? There is no waste of computational resources. Okay, with this architecture, there are a lot of legitimate Q&A, and not knowing which are the Qs in your mind, I took a guess. And I examined 3 possible questions, and of course there are many more, and then provide some answer. Question number 1. By the way, I want to say that at this point, in opening the hood and show how really ALGORAND works with such a simple structure, we must be prepared for some magic, right? Because this problem for Bitcoin is what, 15 years old, has attracted an enormous amount of attention for a very zealous and entrepreneurial community full of innovation. So if we couldn't solve the problem until now, we must take rabbits out of a hat, because we must find some alternative way to solve the problem. The first question he says, gee, you have a committee to decide what is the block is. Who selects the committee? Excellent question. What is the answer? Well, the answer is somewhat surprising. Each committee member secretly selects him or herself. What? This is the worst idea I ever seen. Because, first of all, you must appreciate that this thing has a one good idea. Can you imagine, as a humanity, we agree on almost nothing, right? No. So we are proudly hosting this in Europe. As you know, we are kind of slow in taking our decisions, yes? So can you imagine that the entire humanity now agrees on a 1,000 people committee? How long will it take? Hours and hours and hours and months and years of discussions. So if we instead, each of us self-selects himself, this can be instantaneous. But of course, I can select myself every single time, right? I want to be part of the committee today, tomorrow, the day after, forever. Well, not so fast, because essentially, to select yourself, it's not a question of volunteering. You must run your own individual lottery inside your computer. It's going to be a cryptographic lottery, and you cannot winning except with small probability. Let me give you an example. Assume the users are 1 million, and I want 1,000 more or less committee members. Then every one of us selects him or herself with probability 1 in 1,000. 1 million divided 1,000 is in expectation 1,000. If we have 1 billion users, no problem. Each one of us selects himself with probability 1 in 1 million. 1 billion divided 1 million is 1,000. So if I run my own lottery, and this lottery I cannot cheat because it's cryptographically fair, and each one of us wins with probability 1 in 1 million, we are going to have our 1,000 strong committee no matter what, and nobody can cheat. And in no time, because we don't need to communicate to one another, right? That's much better. By the way, you know what this reminds me of? Reminds me of Google hiring. You know, Google puts posters online, of course, but also old-fashioned way next to various universities, because they wanted to have talented technologists and mathematicians to work for them. But can you imagine that Google says, you know, whoever thinks is good enough to work at Google, please apply. We are going to have a competition, and we had to hire the entire academic world to interview the millions of people who in good faith apply to Google. Instead, what Google does is the following. I'll give you a mathematical riddle. If you solve it, call this number. That's better. They save hiring all of us to run the committee to interview all the people. So the people interview themselves by whether or not they're capable of solving the problem. Okay, then once you reduce them very much, you have a further interview, right? It's the same concept. All right. Wait a minute. Okay, I got you. Very quickly, 1,000 committee members assembled from the entire world. Done. I'm not disputing this anymore. However, aren't you, Silvio, saying that the Byzantine Agreement is so slow? Did I hear you that the largest application were 12 people? Now there is 1,000. How we do that? Well, I promise that it is a Byzantine Agreement, but it's not going to be one of the old ones. It's going to be a new one. And this new one is going to be very fast. How fast? Well, remember, we are going to agree on a block proposed by somebody else. If the proposer is honest, we are done in 4 steps. And if the proposer is dishonest and tries to confuse by giving different blocks to different people, then in expectation, we are done in 9 steps. Now, 9 steps seems very little, but what do you do in a step? Well, what you do in a step is something horrendous. I propagate a short message. So question, can 1,000 people propagate a short message 9 times? Answer, yes. Proof, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Done. Okay, that's the way it works. Okay, so now I pull over the hat another more troublesome question. You say, you, Silvio, said I want a protection against a super-duper bad adversary. This adversary is enough, it points at somebody and he corrupts them altogether. Okay, you have elected 1,000 people in the committee. Each one who, if he wins the lottery, has a proof that he wins the lottery, so has a ticket proving that is the winning ticket, and therefore you have to listen to me as a part of the committee, listen to my message in the part of the committee. Can't the adversary corrupt these 1,000 people immediately? Even though I'm postulating that they cannot corrupt more than 1/3 of the users on the internet, but 1,000 people. What is 1/3? 1/3 is in the billions, but in 1,000 people I can surely corrupt all of them. Right? That is a problem. By the way, I cannot corrupt them before they send the first message. Why? Because now if you don't mind, I play the bad guy. I see the block has been proposed. I know a committee is going to be coming up. Remember, I'm looking at billions of users. 1,000 of you are going to win your own lottery ticket, but I don't know which. So I have the binocular, I spy everybody. I cannot tell who is going to win. But when you show the lottery ticket and you show your message, I can corrupt you right away. but I cannot stop the first message in the protocol. Why? Because you propagated them simultaneously, the proof that you are part of the committee, the winning ticket, and your first message in the protocol. And even though I'm the super-duper adversary, I cannot take back a sponge from the network, a message which is virally propagating in the network. No more than the United States can put back in the bottle a message propagated by WikiLeaks. Otherwise, WikiLeaks will not be a problem to anybody, right? So if you don't like a message, suck it back in the bottle and seal the bottle. This cannot be done, right? So the first message is okay. But the protocol will continue for 9 messages. So if I'm corrupted, only the first message, I say honestly, am I corrupted and do whatever the adversary wants because now I'm a zombie for the rest of 8 messages? This is not going to work. Well, what is the answer? Remember, this process of self-selection is so fast because you decided in the privacy of your computer by doing a mini individual lottery. Do it again for every step of the protocol, right? There are 9 steps, so we do it 9 times. And so you have a separate 1,000 people committee for each step of the protocol. Well, wait a minute. That means that every committee speaks only once, and you give both the proof that you win and your message. And these are different people are selected for different steps. Nonsense. Why nonsense? Well, I'll tell you why nonsense. Because what is a protocol? It's a kind of an intelligent discussion, right? Which has some goals. And have you ever seen an intelligent discussion in which 1,000 people start the discussion, we hear what they say, then suddenly an enemy comes in, kills all the 1,000 people, no problem. Another different random 1,000 people show up and continue the discussion. Continue what? When I talk in a discussion, I remember what I heard, I remember who said what to me, I change my mind depending on what I heard, and then decides what I'm going to say next. If I'm killed and then somebody comes into my shoes and has no connection with me whatsoever, in what sense can continue my role in the protocol? Right? Well, that seems to be true. However, this protocol, this Byzantine protocol that I'm proposing, not only is the super fast duper protocol, but actually has another property, player replaceability, that is a brand new property. And this property is so crazy that in 40 years that I'm doing cryptography, I never defined it before, nobody defined it before, because nobody could believe that it worked. What does this mean? This means exactly what I say, that the protocol continues correctly even though the players are killed and new players are replaced with no connection to the previous ones. Gee, with this thing I cannot do much. Well, there is something I do. Assume the protocol has a very elementary goal. At every step, each one of us says a random number between 1 and 100. Ready? I say 47. Wendy says 42. And right, Matteo, 73. Okay. We are all killed. Somebody comes in and they say another random number. Do we care if they are the same people than before? No, because right, who cares if I'm the same person? If my role every time I'm called to action is to say a random number between 1 and 100, I could be replaced. But short of that, there is no other goal that can be accomplished in a player replaceable way. Let me convince that this is not true by means of an example. And because a picture is worth 1,000 words, a MIDI amateur video is worth 1,000 pictures. Okay, here we are. Okay, we have been talking about ALGORAND and adversary for a while. The adversary fought hard. We have a tattered flag, but our flag still flies. And the enemy is entrenched in very strong positions, but that's the end of the talk. Player replaceability is the last goal we want to achieve, or at least discuss today. We are going to have a frontal assault and clear the field from the enemy, carrying our colors across. In so doing, we shall suffer very heavy casualty. Just look at that. However, even though we are killed, somebody will substitute us and carry our flag. And if the flag crosses the field, we won. Ready? Protocol, charge! No sound. boom, boom, boom. Something happened. But in any case, you got the idea. We won, okay? Good guys won. So, but if you go back for a second, I really want to look at the colors of a player, right? We start with some, it's hard to say, maybe black players. Now we have blue players. We have red players. And we have green players, right? So the player changed all along. And still, the goal was carried out correctly. So that essentially is the idea, right? So what do we all, again, what is our structure? Somebody self-select him or herself to propose a block. And proposes a block. Or as he or she proposes the same block to everybody. Never mind. 1,000 people self-select themselves to run Byzantine Agreement on the proposed block. And this Byzantine Agreement takes 9 steps, and if this is not enough, is player replaceable. So if adversary somehow corrupts immediately every committee for every devoted to each single step, the protocol works no matter what. We arrive to the finish line victorious. That is the idea. So again, these are all the players involved. What is the relationship between them? None. They're a totally brand new set of players. They are also different in numbers, because you remember, there are a lottery, right? So sometimes I get 1,000, sometimes I get 1,200, sometimes I get 850, and so on and so forth. And they have no shared variable, no secret passage communication, but they have a shared environment. And that allows them to act as if it's a single committee. And so we are going to get very big things with these minimal requirements. So the initial idea of this ALGORAND was with Sergei Gorbunov, at that time a student at MIT. We've known some further, my cryptography colleague at MIT, some better improvements on the Byzantine Agreement on top of it. A formal paper with my former student Jing Cheng is coming, and the system group at MIT has actually tested this for scalability and with good and positive results. So there is going to be some comparison with our technology, but I walk on my watch and skip them. We can go back to that. Let me summarize it. So what happens in ALGORAND, there are no forks. And I think it's good, because nobody likes ambiguity. There are no miners, because we, the citizens, are in charge from beginning to end, and we are not need the help of anybody. There is no proof of work. All we have to do is very small amount of computation, and any block can be relied upon immediately rather than waiting to confirmation. Trivial computation, perfect scalability, and great security. And by the way, this works as a national currency and everything else on top of the traditional things. So let me close and say in closing that we have often erected to the skies architecture of great beauty and great and wonderful use. Behold the Julian Bridge, was erected in 3 BC, in operation for over 2,000 years, unrepaired, and if this is not enough, somehow until 2005, cars and trucks were allowed to cross the Great Bridge. Isn't this great? The bridge is in southern France and spans the Calavon River. So I believe that the shared ledger is going to be as a useful infrastructure to cement and unify us as anyone we ever built. And if properly built, is going to be as beautiful as any other infrastructure we ever built in the past. In fact, if we build correctly, it's going to be responsible to keep our planet up for many years to come. And speaking of building the planet up, as you know, the role to that fell to the good old Atlas, but after so many years, the guy looks a little bit tired. So take a break, we'll take it from here. Thank you very much.
Hello. You mentioned that the adversary wouldn't be able to forge digital signatures.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that that happens?
So, of course, that is the assumption. The adversary can do anything, I'm assuming, except forge a digital signature. What do? Is that we have to use a digital signature that has some proof of correctness, that at least is probably equivalent to some extraordinary problem, either in number theory or in lattice theory, in geometry of numbers, or in number theories, which are geometry and number theory as the oldest problems in mathematics, and the oldest fields in mathematics. There is plenty of things to do, and what you do is that you make sure that if the adversary solves a digital signature, is actually not being aware of it, is actually solve these other hard problems that nobody could solve after thousands and thousands of years. That's the sense in which I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
When there is a collision of contributions to the chain, so several people makes a new block concurrently with others, how they choose which order are set in the chain?
Great. So, remember that assume now there is going to be 150 blocks in the chain, and now we want to add another block of transactions, right? So the people transact in the background all the time. So you propagate your transactions all over the place. Assume they are payments, you propagate your payments. And so each one of us is selected with some small probability to propose the block. When the proposer of the block, assume that there is, for easier numbers, 90% honest, 10% dishonest. So 9 out of 10 of the times, the block proposer is going to be honest. And he or she has seen mostly the same transaction that you've seen plus or minus a small delta. So the proposer, if he's honest, looks which ones are valid, and then puts in the block all the valid ones, right? And then, of course, there may be another transaction that has not been, maybe didn't see, even though he was honest, and he did not make it. So that transaction has to wait for the next honest person. So the honest person not only puts, all good valid transaction in the next block, but also puts all the ones he's aware of. If the proposer is dishonest, he can say, sorry, but I didn't see any transaction. In such a case, you have an empty block. You have to wait for the next honest person to be up for the job, right? So that is roughly the idea. So you don't, even though you don't post directly yourself the transaction in the block, you propagate the block, and whenever a good proposer of the block is honest, is going to put your transaction inside there. A dishonest person can put no transaction or only the transaction of his own friends. So for instance, if I am here a bad guy in a non-democratic or fully democratic state, and if I am here surrounded by very rich oligarchs, and one of them crosses me in the hallway in a way that I didn't like, so how does he dare? You know what? He has $1 billion in the system, but I don't want to be able to spend it, right? So I'm going to say, if I'm in charge of a block, or I'm in charge of 10% of the people of the internet, I'm going to assure Mr. So-and-so should never have a transaction in the block. Yes, sir, and I'm obeyed by a lot of people. However, the good guys don't even know, but they don't care the less whatever edict I'm propagating. And as soon as one of them is proposing the block, any valid payment is going to be inserted in it. So it's just a question of waiting. It's a question of what is called technical liveliness, to say that there is a certain rate in which transactions are governed by honest people, and therefore the system makes good progress.
Hello. You say there are no miners, but in the classical blockchain, the miners are actually the people making it live, and that's the reason why they have an incentive to do by mining Bitcoins, for example. So what is the incentive in ALGORAND for millions of people to make it work and select themselves as committee and things like that?
Excellent question. Also very difficult question to answer fully, but I can at least start, give the gist of it, and maybe afterwards we can elaborate more. So remember one thing. Bitcoin needed the miners because somebody has to solve the riddle in order for the new block to appear. However, to solve a riddle requires extraordinary amount of power. And I've been trying and trying and trying and trying. Finally, I'm paying electricity all the time. Finally, I put the block. Each block right now, or at least a few months ago, was some $50,000 in electricity cost to play. So therefore, somebody says, hey, I'd like to mine, but if you want me to mine, you must make me whole for my loss. You must give me this $50,000 and perhaps give me some bit extra. So remember that the first 50,000, they must be given, otherwise nobody mines. And if nobody mines, there are no blocks. The ledger stops. That's no good. So we must make, for sure, compensate the cost, and then whatever, if you want to be kind, a little bit more for a little bit of profit. So in ALGORAND, instead, there are no costs. Because there are no costs to say, well, in one view of the humanity, which is the view that I adopt, but I try to be more safe than my own views, is that, what does it mean if I'm honest? That I do the same thing. Well, I'm going to say the following. Assume that I have two actions. One action is honest action and gives me $100. I have another action, which is not honest action, right? But it gives me 100.01 cent. So I'm assuming that an honest person, given the choice of honestly earning $100 or dishonestly earning an additional cent, will be honest. If this is true, we don't need incentives, okay? Now, is this true? Well, just in case it's not true, I'm saying we are here at the luxury of being able to put a little bit of incentives. But remember, these are pure incentives that are not needed to make somebody holds of a big expense, right? If somebody says, Silvio, do you want to save the world? Yes, very good. Immediately pay $100,000 to this account for saving the world. They go, yes, I want to save the world, but darling, how about you save it today? I'll save it tomorrow, right? So if instead saving the world costs me nothing, right? Even if I refuse an extra cent, I think I'll do the right thing. And I'm not alone in this. None of us. So what in ALGORAND we have here, the unprecedented luxury to be able to use incentive, if we want, for achieving additional goals. But in so doing, we must be extremely careful, because whenever we offer people money, people don't longer remember the goal I wanted to achieve. They only see money, and their reason starts being, how do I maximize the money I receive? So I may use incentives, as Mr. Nakamoto intended, or Mrs. Nakamoto intended a long time ago, to mine properly, and instead we created a monster that is totally run amok, because who could predict? Well, who could predict? People in front of money, they start doing all things. So it is a great place to be, not to be needing to rely on incentive, but we can, yes, introduce incentive, and there are various ways in which we can introduce it, to achieve extra goals without risking to collapse by some sudden mistake of entire architecture.
Thank you very much. We don't have time. Catalan chocolate for you.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So we continue now with the panel session. Yeah. The panel session will be chaired by Professor Chris Hankin, who is Professor of Computer Science at Imperial College in London, and also he's the co-director of the College Institute for Security Science and Technology. His research is in data analytics and cybersecurity. Chris was the chair of the editorial board which produced the first ACM white paper, European ACM white paper on cybersecurity, and now is our boss. We yesterday selected him as the chair for the ACM Europe Council. You have a very hard work to do, just replacing Wendy, but I'm sure that we will do very well. Please take the control of the session.
So could I invite the panel members to come up and sit here, and I'll make a few introductory remarks. So it's a great privilege to follow such a wonderful lecture. Thank you, Silvio. As Matteo has introduced me, my name is Chris Hankin and I'm from Imperial College London. I've been a professor of computing science there for many years, and for the last 10 years I've directed something called the Institute for Security Science and Technology, which is a very broad-based security institute. But specifically for the purposes of this panel, I'm also director of something called the Research Institute in Trustworthy Industrial Control Systems, which is a cybersecurity research institute that's funded under the UK's National Cybersecurity Programme, and we've been looking particularly at the security of SCADA networks and cyber-physical systems. And because of that interest, when I joined the ACM Europe Council and had the opportunity to join their policy arm, EU ACM, I took a role in helping to produce the white paper on cybersecurity, which has subsequently been endorsed by US ACM as well, and is available from the EU ACM website. So if you haven't read it, I hope you'll take an opportunity to look at it. It's really in three main parts. It looks at some of the research and development challenges in cybersecurity at the present time. It looks quite deeply at some of the educational issues and at the issue of workforce development for cybersecurity, and it also looks at the ethics of cybersecurity. And it's really those three issues which I hope will parallel during the panel discussion this afternoon. Just a word on what we've done with the white paper. As I say, it's there on the website, so I hope you'll take the opportunity to have a look at it if you haven't already seen it. It was produced, as I said earlier, by EU ACM, which is the policy arm of the ACM Europe Council, and it was done specifically because the scientific advisory mechanism within the European Commission, which replaced the chief scientific advisor when the president of the Commission changed, that scientific advisory mechanism has a high-level group, which in 2016 selected cybersecurity as one of their priority topics. So the white paper, to a certain extent, was produced specifically to feed into their deliberations. And I have to say, largely due to the efforts of our chair of EU ACM, Fabrizio Gagliardi, we managed to present the paper repeatedly in Brussels until they listened. And in their final report, our white paper features quite strongly as one of the sources that they used in formulating their thinking about cybersecurity. We're going to build on that success, I hope, through a new collaboration that we have with Informatics Europe, which is now looking at a white paper on automated decision-making, and again looking at some of the research issues, some of the education and workforce development issues that arise in algorithmic decision-making, and also again some of the ethical issues. But that's really for later, maybe for the next ACM Europe Conference. For today, we're going to focus on cybersecurity, and I'm joined by a very prestigious panel. Matteo, I think, introduced the panel members by name. In a moment, I'm going to give them the opportunity to speak for about 5 minutes each and give their own particular perspective on some of the issues relating to cybersecurity. My panel members are Dame Wendy Hall, Professor Dame Wendy Hall, who you all know because she was chair of ACM Europe until yesterday when I took over from her, and has been president of the ACM, so a very well-known figure who I'm really excited was able to join the panel. I was excited that all of the people were able to join the panel, I should say, so I won't keep saying that. Next to her is Manel Medina, who is a local boy, if I can call him a boy, who actually has spent many years working with ENISA, the European Network and Information Security Agency, and is a true cybersecurity expert. Next to him is Judith Gal-Ezer, who was very instrumental in the production of the ACM Europe white paper on cybersecurity and has particular expertise on the educational aspects. Next to her is Gerhard Schimpf, who was one of the reviewers of our white paper and has lots of expertise in the area of cyber-physical systems and security. And then we're delighted that today we're joined by Jeremy Epstein, who's right at the far end of the group of panelists there, who's deputy chair of US ACM. So he's our, sorry, I think I've got your right designation in terms of your role in US ACM. I just got a signal from Pat that I might have said something slightly wrong.
Vice chair, I think, officially, but it's close enough.
And as I mentioned earlier, US ACM have both endorsed our white paper on cybersecurity, but we've also been working with them on a number of issues recently, and I'm looking forward to much more interaction. So that's enough for me for the moment. First of all, I'm going to run down that line and give each of the panelists up to about 5 minutes to say a few opening remarks. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a bit of a discussion between me and the panelists, and with the exception of one of the panelists, I sent a set of questions to them in advance, and we won't necessarily stick to those questions, but we'll have a bit of a discussion. When we've had that discussion, I'll give the panelists a short opportunity to just sum up, and then we'll open it for discussion. So my plan is sort of the hour and a half we have, maybe as much as the first hour will be people talking at you, I'm afraid, and you listening to a conversation going on at the front. And then in the last half hour, we'll open it up to questions, and I hope by that time we'll get lots of interaction with you. So that's the plan for the panel, and I'll now sit down and I'll give Wendy an opportunity. I suggest the panelists remain seated. I hope you're not too hidden by the screens, and we each have a microphone in front of us.
So, Christopher.
Thank you.
He asked me yesterday to be on this panel, and then I didn't get the questions until an hour ago, and then he asked me to speak first. But hey, I can always speak about anything at any time, so we're okay. We're okay. I will give you my perspective, which I'm not a. That was I should say that was a wonderful keynote, by the way. Thank you. I did say to him as I came up on the stage, what financial contract have I got involved with since that lecture? I hope nothing. He kept saying we were digitally signing a contract. I didn't think we were, but there you go. But you don't know in the digital world, do you? Really? Sometimes you really don't know what you're doing. I'm not someone who is deep into the technology of cybersecurity, but cybersecurity is a really broad brush thing. I do a lot of work with the UK government, advising them on it, on various issues. And what I was really liked about the paper that EU ACM produced was that it took that broad scope of the topic. This is not just about deeply technical issues. This is about people as well as the technology, and that's one of the things, of course, my research life revolves around these days. just looking at the questions that Chris sent around to the panel, you know, what are the main technical trends? Well, from my point of view, I'm not an expert in blockchain. I'm much more on Bitcoin. I know much more about it now than I did. But my interests are very much in things like the Internet of Things, and the fourth wave of AI, which is what everyone's talking about. I'll come back to that later. And as I said, it's these are, to me, these are major trends that are going to really be things we'll be discussing in the area of cybersecurity for ages. And I just want to talk a little bit about something that I'm always asked to speak about at the moment, which is the future of the internet. You know, I get asked by the journalists all the time, what is the future of the internet? If I knew, I'd be very rich. But the whole point is I don't think anybody knows. Because it has a life of its own, and partly it has a life of its own because we, the people, use it, and it isn't a deterministic technology. And the fact that the way it was designed as open and free for everybody to use, and the whole point of the internet was that it built on the network effect. The more people that use it, the more people that will use it. And of course, Tim Berners-Lee built on that design when he designed the World Wide Web. Now I haven't got anything to write on, I haven't got a note, but I would urge you, if you, this August, there was a wonderful series of programs on BBC Radio 4. And the wonderful thing about BBC Radio 4 is that they put everything on the web, and it's there now, you can all listen to these 3 programs. And they were by Alex Krotowski, who's a social psychologist from, well, she's American, did her work in Sussex and then Oxford, and is now back in America. She's a great person who, in terms of talking about technology in ways that people understand. There are 3 programs, and it's called Alex in Wonderland. So Alex is A-L-E-K-S, right? You mean, put any of this into Google, you'll find it. Isn't Google wonderful? Alex in Wonderland, the story of the internet. There's 3 programs, and the first program was which she called the International League of Geeky Gentlemen. And in this, she characterized the beginning of the internet in terms of how people were building that network of computers. And I've heard this story from many people. The way it was designed was it was with people like themselves. So if you think about, you know, I'm not calling Vint Cerf a geek, but he's certainly a gentleman, as is Bob Kahn. And the people like this were trying to build a network that any computer could interact with, and open and free was what it was all about. Open, we'd say open access today. But in those days, and I remember this when I was, I'm going to have to speed up a bit, when I was a lecturer at Southampton in the early days, if students misbehaved on the internet, the boss used to say, oh, they'd lose their account, that's it. They're suspended, all right? That's it. And it was like, it was controlled because you knew who they were, right? And then you'd teach them a lesson and you let them back in if they said they behaved themselves. And that was how it sort of ran in the old days. And that she made this point very much, that the first spam message was an accident. It went out by accident. People discovered what you could do on this system by accident. To cut a long story short, or an hour and a half of programming short, she called the second program the Worldwide Villain. And this is the, you know, Tim invented, he says on the program, I invented the web because I needed it. But actually the whole point of what he did was to enable people to share information. He built on the founding principles of the internet. Everything was open and free. He gave it away. It works on the network effect. The more people that use it, the more people that use it. And he didn't build in any access controls or security controls into that system. The idea was it would be good for everybody. And that's what, in those days, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that's what we all thought. It was going to give a better, you know, democratization of knowledge. It's a bit like we're all going to have lots more leisure time when we don't have to print things. You know, it's that sort of, what have we done to ourselves? We've created this thing, and now it's turning on us, right? And we're constantly having to retrofit security and access controls because this is where the attacks come. And she called the third program the attack of the zombie baby monitors. right? The idea that this is the future, this is the, we've bought baby monitors, we've got phones with chips in, we've no idea where they come from, and in a certain date, in 3 years' time, they're all going to rise up and potentially attack us. You know, this is the science fiction world. In the UK, we'd call it the Doctor Who world of the future. But the thing is, we don't know. We have no idea, right? We're buying these things. There's no licensing. We don't know where the stuff's coming from. So we are sort of the creating our own doomsday scenario here. And the question is, what do we do about it? And I'm hoping the rest of the panel are going to be able to answer that for me. I'll say a couple more things. There is, you know, how do we fix the internet? Well, do we stop and start again? There's a sort of a, what if we did, what would we do differently? If we were doing it today, what would we do differently? That would, because this is where the attacks come. The hacking, now the ransomware, your stolen identities, it all comes. And then I just want to talk here again about democracy. We always thought the internet would open up democracy to the world, who didn't know about it. And it seems to be turning against us again. And you take the US presidential election, there was an amazing program on the BBC about Silicon Valley and how, and also Cambridge Analytica, who did a lot of the work to help Trump win the election. And it was a campaign, it was AI applied to profiling of people and targeted messaging. It was all about data and who gave them the access to the data. I mean, it's really all about who's got access to our data. And then you get to the issues of privacy versus surveillance. Because we want our governments to help protect us, we want things to run for the good, but that means we've got to share our data with people, and actually it's all with the companies anyway. So these are major issues for us, all of us, that we need to sort out. This comes to the ethical points, and of course, education is the key, but I'm going to leave Judith to talk more about education because she knows more about than I do. And I could say loads more, but I will stop there.
I'll stop now, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Mamal, could you pick up that baton and say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. It's true that internet was built on the freedom, expecting people will be honest, and but the problem is not that there are individuals using internet that are not honest. The problem is that there are organized criminals that have a lot of money and that can use those resources for cheating other people. And that is one question that needs to be addressed by computing people that is using computers for analyzing the information, as was mentioned before, and we have to find ways to discriminate the good people from the bad people, and trying to discover how they behave, and try to analyze their behavior and trying to predict how they will react in the future, in order to be ready to protect ourselves. It's true that this question about privacy and surveillance is important. Now there is a problem of one of the internet things, the DNS, the systems that allow us to use human readable addresses to access computers. This information is stored by the registries, and now there is a problem that some people claims that the information of the people that has registered domains should not be openly accessible by everybody because it's private information. So this means that when criminals register 400,000 domains to be used for stealing information from other users or from selling bad goods on internet, they will not be able to be accessible by everybody very quickly in order to find them before they go to another place. So we have to to address this question and trying to convince the people that they have to share information in a fair way so that it's possible altogether to fight against criminals that share information without restrictions of privacy.
Judith, would you like to?
Okay, I got the questions a few weeks ago, and I am the student that does exactly what the teacher asked to do. So you asked us to introduce ourselves. So here I am a professor of computer science affiliated with the Open University of Israel. I was the founder of the computer science department at the university, designed computer undergraduate and graduate curriculum. I served about 10 years as vice president, which is a rector of the university. I served as chair and member of the Ministry of Education committee that designed the high school computing curriculum about 20 years ago. I'm still a member of this committee, which is designing a computing curriculum for elementary school and middle school now. I've served 2 years on the Israeli Council for Higher Education, responsible for all higher education study programs. And I'm serving on the ACM Europe Council, UACM Policy Committee member, I'm a CSTA Advisory Council, that is the Computer Science Teacher Association, and I'm on the Google Education Advisory Council. And by now you know that my area of interest is computer science education research. From my point of view, and you asked us to say what are the big issues, it's raising cybersecurity awareness among parents or people in position of responsibility, to being alert to the pitfalls of uncontrolled access to computer systems, and be able to take positive steps to ensure safety, security, and positive interaction with such systems. And this brings us to integrating cybersecurity issues in computing or informatics, as it's called in Europe, curriculum in K-12 and higher education, in two different paths of two different paths, for the general public and for professionals. And I can elaborate on it later. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm the poor soul that has to deal in practice with the buggy systems. So my view on cybersecurity is that of a practitioner. And based on the various careers during my business life, I first worked as a software development manager at IBM over 20 years. After IBM, I worked as a security consultant at a consulting firm specializing on access control. And finally, I had my own consulting firm. In that capacity, I was acting CISO for a large utility company with 45,000 employees in 6 countries. And luckily, in 5 years, we had no severe security incident. And I guess it was probably sheer luck. And our systems were never brought down. But this was a constant struggle together with my security teams. And this struggle goes on, and I think it will become even harder in the future. If I look at the status quo where we stand now, the big issues is that today we have a high number of legacy systems in operation that are insecure and unmanaged. We have lousy system administrators. Recently, a whole lot of open source databases like Mongo were developed, and where the system administrators didn't change the initial password. So that's just, it's just lousy operation, unmanageable. Then we have a tremendous shortage of skilled security professionals. Large operations, of course, can hire skilled people, but the small caps cannot. So this is a problem when enterprises operate in supply chains. The small guy may be a risk to its partners. That was just happening recently with the WannaCry incident. So a small subsidiary of the Deutsche Bundesbahn caused a problem and finally, it was a hit in Germany. Also, we had the wake-up call that's coming probably even more than we saw it before. A whole set of totally insecure IoTs are hitting the market. Cheap devices from China with lousy protection mechanisms. And these were recently combined into a botnet, and we saw the attack through DIN with a mirror attack. Also, we have a very mature exploit industry. As soon as a new exploit arrives, very soon after that, kits are being sold on the black market to generate ransomware attacks. And as a result, we see an increase in spam to deliver ransomware and a dramatic increase in cyber attack frequency. So the hacking community is benefiting from easy access to low-cost resources. And we see an interaction of security and safety risk, the combination of security and safety, especially now when we go into new domains like connected cars. If a connected car is attacked through an insecure internet, the car is not safe. So there's a big problem in my opinion. We have new applications in the medical field. There was recently a case study where a pacemaker attached to the internet was attacked to the internet. So it was totally exposed, no security measures. So there are new devices that need to be designed really with security measure. And we have an ongoing problem with advanced persistent threats, where highly sophisticated and targeted spear phishing combined with social engineering, they prepare attacks, they easily jump over the firewall and cause long-lasting exposures, and many organizations need more than 200 days to find out that they have been attacked. So overall, with all this combined, currently we have a huge damage to our industries and societies. I have the figure for Germany. We have about 300,000 attacks per day, and we have an economic loss of 45 to 70 billion euros per year, which is about 1.5 to 2% of the German GDP. So that's where we stand right now from my opinion.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. As Chris said, I'm Jeremy Epstein. I'm the Vice Chair of US ACM, which is the US Public Policy Committee of ACM. My day job is that I manage part of the computer science research program at the US National Science Foundation. For those of you not familiar with the National Science Foundation, NSF funds research at universities around the US. Our budget is about $8 billion US dollars a year, of which about 900 million US dollars goes for computer science research, of which about $80 million goes for cybersecurity and privacy research. So it's almost 1%, or it's about 1% of the total science research budget from NSF in the United States goes to cybersecurity. That's a pretty large number when you think about it, that 1%, I mean, you include astronomy and biology and geology and zoology, A through Z, 1% of it is going to cybersecurity and privacy. That's a pretty large number. I should say that anything I say, you're looking very puzzled there. Bobby, we can talk about that afterwards. Everything I say is my opinion. I don't speak for the U.S. government. I'm not required to say that. Okay. Some thoughts in terms of where we need to put some focus. Several people have mentioned Internet of Things. We tend to group Internet of Things and also cyber physical systems. Sometimes people argue about where IoT ends and where CPS begins. I don't know that it matters, but I'm thinking not only of the camera in your baby monitor, but also of the computer controls in your electrical power system or in your car or in your manufacturing plant. And those in many ways are an even bigger risk. And in many cases, they're using the same unsecured components as we've seen in IoT devices. And if you have doubts about that, you might consider asking the Iranians about Stuxnet. They have a little bit of experience with that. Others as well, but that's kind of the big one. The other thing I always point to in terms of areas is I think we need to focus a lot more on the interdisciplinary aspects of cybersecurity. Wendy mentioned people are a big part of the problem and a big part of the solution. But when we say people, we need to think not only about psychology and economics, which are the areas that a lot of people focus on, but there's a lot of other social sciences where we need to be considering. I funded a program a number of years ago putting anthropologists in security operations centers to help them understand how people made decisions about how operations people made decisions about what to do in case of an attack. And the anthropologists provided some unique insights, even though they're not technical folks. We just need to think in a lot of different ways about non-technical areas. We also need to think about engaging cybersecurity in everything. We need to think about not only how do we get computer scientists to think about cybersecurity, but how do we get chemical engineers and mechanical engineers and so on to think about cybersecurity. If you're a mechanical engineer and you're building you're designing a new manufacturing plant, you better understand cybersecurity. If you're a civil engineer and you're designing a new bridge, and that bridge is going to have computer-controlled sensors for turning lights on and off, you better think about cybersecurity and so on. We need to figure out, we don't need to turn everyone into a cybersecurity expert, but we need to think about how we help them understand what they need to know. My friend Carl Landwehr teaches a course called Cybersecurity for Future Presidents. And whether you think of it as the president of a country or the president of a company or senior leadership, what do we need to teach people today who are going to be leaders in their countries and their companies 30, 40 years from now? I don't really want to teach them cryptography in terms of the bits and bytes. I don't want to teach them about buffer overflows and how to prevent them. What do I need to teach them so that they will be able to understand security and privacy 30 or 40 years from now as non-technical experts? And I also want to point to something that's a very hot topic in the United States, and that is diversity. When I got into the cybersecurity field, long before it was called cybersecurity, 30 years ago, it was about 30% women. It is now about 10% women. We're going the wrong direction, and we need to put more emphasis. I was at a recent talk where somebody said they were doing cybersecurity competitions, and they were going to, and I said, well, what are you doing to ensure that you're not hurting diversity? And he said, well, anybody can participate who wants, and that's not the point. Yeah, you got it, Wendy. It's
No, you don't. You're speaking to the converted here.
Yeah, I know I'm speaking to the converted to you. I'm not sure if everyone else in the room is converted.
We would encourage people in the room. I think
right.
you're yeah. But
right.
I mean, this is not just a US issue. This,
no,
you
of
said,
course.
it's a huge issue for everyone. It's not easily soluble.
Right. And when we say
I'm very glad the man is talking about
right.
it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And when we say diversity in the US, we frequently mean more women in the field, but we're also talking about ethnic minorities, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, who are Native Americans, who are all dramatically underrepresented compared to their proportion in the population as a whole. So the last point I want to make is, someone mentioned it already, is ethics and ethics in algorithms. If you don't think that's an issue, I encourage you to look at the writings of LaTanya Sweeney from Harvard University, who discovered when she put her name into Google search engines, it offered things like arrest records from LaTanya Sweeney. LaTanya is a name, if you're not familiar with it, that is by far more common among African Americans than white Americans or Asian Americans or any other subpopulation. And it offered arrest records, but when she put in a white-sounding name, it offered beauty tips or something. And similarly, when you put in a female name and look for jobs, you get much lower paying jobs than if you put in a male name and look for jobs. Whether these are deliberate discrimination or not, these are aspects of ethics and discrimination that happen, and it's it's not the same as security and privacy, but it's a closely related topic, so we need to make sure we're paying attention. There's about 87 other things I could talk about, but I think that's enough.
Well, we'll have an opportunity to speak a bit more. So thank you all for those introductory remarks, and I think there were some common issues that came up across all of them, or a number of them. IoT was, as one might have expected, mentioned quite a lot, but also I think some strong statements around things which ACM should be very interested in, to do with skills shortages and awareness across disciplines and across roles in life, starting with parents and others in responsibility for our young people. So there's a good number of issues there that have come up. Now, my mail server is so secure that I can't see the questions I posed either. But I wrote a version of them down, which is probably a less technologically oriented version than you're trying to show me, Wendy. So I'll stick with what I wrote down. I'd like to sort of go back to the panel now with some more targeted sort of questions. We've talked about 10 to 20 years, but maybe we could draw it back to the next, say, 5 years, so near-term future, really. And I'll take the first, or a version of the first two questions I proposed sort of together, which is I'd like to run through each of the panel members and ask them just to reflect on 2 or 3 key trends which they see which are really going to impact on our thinking about cybersecurity over that next short-term period, next 5 years, and maybe also say something about how they would prioritize those issues for people trying to come up with solutions to those potential problems. And this isn't just a technical question, but I'm not going to start with you, Wendy, because but I think I go back to Manal, if I can, first of all, to make a few remarks towards those 2 questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, some of them have already been mentioned, like IoT and SCADA, for 2 reasons. One is because there are many millions of devices connected to the network, and if somebody wants to use them in a fraudulent way, they can have a lot of power. And unfortunately, as Wendy mentioned before, when they were created, it was not forecasted this bad behavior of people. So we are not protected against their use, and they are not protected. And also, the other question you mentioned about awareness, users are not aware that the danger of these devices can cause, so they are not ready to protect them adequately. Unfortunately, the telecom operators neither put the borders in the networks to avoid misuse of these devices. So this is also something that has to be taken into consideration. And another point that I want to introduce in this list of topics is the cloud computing. Traditionally in computing, we have seen distributed computing, grid computing, and things like that. Now we have cloud computing, and this has made wider use of these facilities, and also makes very difficult to trace the behavior of users on the network, because the computers appear and disappear on the different sites around the world, and when somebody uses them fraudulently again, it's very difficult to trace how they have behavior, how they have infected the systems, and make computer forensics for cloud computing is one of the topics that needs to be addressed.
Okay. Jeremy, can I jump to you for the next?
Sure. Excuse me. Wake up. I think we need to put, in more the short term, we need to think about how do we build security in instead of trying to fix it afterwards. I think that's what we spend far too much time. We all know that it costs, depending on who you ask, 10 times or 100 times more to fix a security bug after it's gotten out in the field. We need to do a better job in the short term doing that, and this is especially true with IoT devices. I was asked by a US elected representative what keeps me up at night, and I told him what keeps me up at night is all the IoT devices out there that we have no plan for how we're going to update them, and they're going to be there for the next 30 years. And it's not like we say, throw out your phone and get a new one that doesn't have the vulnerability, throw out your laptop and get a new one that doesn't have the vulnerability. These embedded systems, we're stuck with them for 30 years. What are we going to do? And that scares me more than anything else. So that's why we have to solve those problems now. We can't afford to say, well, we'll get around to it. They're designed without any patching mechanisms.
Can I possibly pick up on that?
I just can add on to this because I see...
I think Wendy was ahead of you.
Can I just pick up on that directly in the panel? Because that's a really good point. It isn't just that, though. It's who's responsible also when they fail. Because the companies that we buy the IoT systems from are not computing companies, right? They're not going to have people that are going to fix it or fix the algorithm that's running your house or your car, right? And I think this is something we, as computer scientists, have really got to help with. You know, when your computer goes wrong, it's a real pain when your computer goes wrong, but there is usually someone at the end of a line that can help you fix it, because that's their job. For the IoT side of things, there's nobody, and for the whole network Internet of Things, and as we go into AI and robotics, and you know, these companies are not responsible necessarily for fixing the software that's controlling everything. And I think that's a major issue for us as a community.
So just before you make your remarks, Gerhard, and we go back to Jeremy to finish off, I've been told that the audibility levels in the room are quite low, so please could you make sure that the microphone is quite close to your mouth when you
Yes.
speak? Thank you. But not too close, thank you.
So your question was, what are the main trends that will impact on cybersecurity over the next 5 years? And I see also the danger that IoT devices have the tendency to kill us. They can really kill us because they are deployed in masses by innocent users also, people that know nothing about security, and they are in the net and producing masses of data. And I mean, in that situation, to do something like forensic analysis, I don't see this happening. So this is a big, big problem. The next problem I see is the impact to cybersecurity through AI. Malware is a big problem. So you could create artificially intelligent malware to attack the systems. It might be nice to have AI do automatic penetration testing. That'd be on the good side. But on the having learning algorithm to develop malware, that's a big thing. Also with AI algorithm taking decisions based on the data used for learning and improving the decision process. Hackers, for instance, could attack these algorithms by making subtle modifications on the input data with huge consequences on those depending on the decisions. And also with more and more big data accumulations, we will have attractive targets for hackers. The last thing is, we see IT and IT security in new domains. For instance, car industry and medical devices. Most of these devices are just developed with requirements in mind. But security is a non-functional requirement. And we have not really learned how to handle non-functional requirements. We know functional requirements, they function, but they are probably insecure. So with critical infrastructures where you have SCADA systems and IoT systems, so on, we need to be extra careful, and I think we are really vulnerable if we are not changing the way we handle security incidents right now. Today, you patch your system when you know the vulnerability, but patching is not enough. We have to get ahead of the pack and dig really deep into the system that are there and try to find the holes before the hacker does.
So I would expect, Wendy, you'd want to pick up on the AI point, maybe. So maybe we can go to you next.
Well, yeah, and I was going to, how many years did you give us to think ahead?
5 years.
5, is that
Yeah.
all?
Yeah, that's all, yes.
Okay. I think the key thing for me in the AI is that we don't really have a sense of how this is going or how fast and how soon it will be before machines talk to machines without us in the loop. I think that's a really big issue, and that we as a community need to keep and I, you know, I think back to Asimov and iRobot and rules, and I think this comes back to the ethics, is that we have to, I mean, you said, or I can't remember whether it was Jeremy or Gerhardt said, we've got to think about security first, we mustn't retrofit. But the problem with thinking about security, because there are people in the loop and you don't know what people en masse are going to do, it's very hard to predict exactly what, you know, actually is going to happen. The machines will quite quickly, because they won't get answers from us, they'll cut us out of the loop. They will talk to each other and develop answers in a, you know, in a maybe uncontrollable way. And we might have to have rules about how we regulate that type of world. I mean, this is, you know, I'm painting, there are lots of upsides, of course, we know that, to all these things. But, you know, like everyone says, it's healthcare and all the things we want the AI to help us to do. But the downsides are huge, and this community needs to really help think about what is going to, you mentioned automated cars, and that's one of my nightmares, and that's already hitting us in terms of who's responsible, what decision do they make when. We know this, right? This is not new, but it's this, machines taking over. I was going to say, when I asked you about how many years as well, is the thing that we're thinking about IoT devices going into the physical world, but what I've been thinking about for many years is this whole where the physical and virtual worlds meet. We increasingly live, I mean, you know, some of us are on our devices while we're here, but you know, we're increasingly living in a virtual world as well as in a physical world. Distinguish, that's going to, I can't think of the right words, and I'm not jet lagged. It's going to let, that boundary is going to get more and more confused. And also, we're going to start putting chips into our bodies, right? So it won't just be Internet of Things going into physical objects like buildings and robots. We will put them into our bodies as well. And I mean, if you're thinking about how do we deal with security before we do that, then that's one thing where you should probably say we really need, because this gets to the medical ethics stuff as well as people trying to, the cyborg nightmares. And I think the research is being done, it's happening, I've seen it in the labs, you know. So we really, really ought to think about how we regulate that space before anything is allowed to be sold to anybody. But there you go.
So, Judith, I haven't given you a chance to say anything yet.
I can jump to the third question, if you
Sorry,
like,
yeah,
because
well,
nothing
sorry.
will happen without education.
I was going to say, you raised particularly the issue which I think Jeremy echoed around cybersecurity awareness, and maybe you could focus particularly on some of your ideas on how we can actually set about having digital citizens, if you like, who are aware of some of the pitfalls, and how would we approach this general awareness agenda?
Okay, I will try to. Well, the importance of cybersecurity is recognized, and indeed there are educational initiatives that are paying attention to this need too. So I would say that the goal of educating cybersecurity is twofold, and I mentioned it. On the one hand, it is crucial to prepare a workforce with the needed knowledge and the abilities to protect and the knowledge needed. The mic. Okay. And again, to raise the public awareness of dangers and assist in protecting the computers and internet activities. I will elaborate on the professional, and then I'll go back to the general education. So numerous documents and reports have already been published referring to the issue of cybersecurity. The CSTA K-12 standard includes cybersecurity from the very beginning stages of education. It starts in the 6th to 8th grades, providing very simple explanation, which is possible, and then continue with further steps in grade 9 and 10, and even further at 11 and 12. And the ACM and IEEE Joint Task Force presented the curriculum guidelines for undergraduate computer science, and it added the information assessment and security as a new knowledge area out of 18 knowledge areas. And this document provides a very detailed cybersecurity curriculum. Based on these published documents, we see, on the one hand, it seems it is agreed that cybersecurity be included as a subject in any curriculum of computing, whether to some extent in K-12 system and in higher education systems. But on the other hand, it is not yet recognized as an autonomous issue. That is, there is no undergraduate degree in cybersecurity, but one can later specialize in master's or a PhD degree. It can be studied as a track in underdegree or in undergraduate or graduate programs. And this track will usually contain specific courses as cryptography, foundational concepts in security, principles of security design, threats and attacks, network security, defensive program, etc. Cybersecurity issues can also be integrated in other courses and should be integrated in other courses, such as operating systems, communication, for example, in particular if there are no specific courses devoted to this area in the study program. In the social context, there is a need of understanding and practicing cybersecurity in the social context. Within the general public, there ought to exist cybersecurity awareness, as I mentioned already. This includes, okay, I passed this. And as I said, the duty of parents and guardians, folks of position of responsibility, should be able to alert to pitfalls that can be happen. How will this be done? In order to be able to fulfill their duty, they have to acquire the relevant knowledge. And this will be made possible if important issues of cybersecurity are integrated in general study programs, whether in schools or in liberal arts schools. Okay, I'll stop here and conclude.
I was just going to wonder whether Jeremy, since you also mentioned awareness, would like to give your perspective on those issues and how we could...
So, about 3 or 4 months ago, President Trump, as much as it pains me to say those two words in succession, I didn't say that, did I? I just thought that. I just thought it. Okay.
It's gone out to the whole web.
There was an executive order, which is a special directive, if you will, from the president. It doesn't have the force of law, but it can make certain things happen. So he gave one of these directives to come up with a report for what we should be doing in cybersecurity education and training to help address the shortage of people and what we should be doing in terms of training the existing workforce and educating the future workforce. And so we put together this group of people from across the US government to write a report. And as much as anyone reads any of these reports that sit on a shelf, I think there's a lot of different areas that we have to focus on. We can't just look at university level education. We can't just look at training. Getting certificates from Cisco or Microsoft or whomever is a useful way to get somebody some basic training, but it doesn't give them the education to really solve the problems. And we really have to be paying attention to this as part of the primary and secondary school, not just college education. So need it all throughout. And in doing it, we need to make sure we're being very careful that we're not doing it in an exclusionary way that reduces diversity. And I come back to that word again. If you look at the studies, it shows that girls go into middle school knowing that they're better at math than boys, and they lose that in middle school. And we need to make sure, we need to fix that for math, and we also need to fix that for computer science and cybersecurity in particular.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else want to say anything about this issue? Mano.
Yes, I think that it's important to take into consideration, as Judith mentioned it, that we have to train everybody, not only technical people, but also the end users. One current trend to do that, I'm collaborating with the Stop Think Connect campaign, launched originally by the NCCA, and now taken by Anti-Phishing Working Group in Europe, and also ENISA. And one of the goals addressing by those campaigns is to use gamification tools in order to make training more, not only more, let's say, user-friendly, to make it more attractive to users, but also to facilitate collaboration between users, so that the people can ask their colleagues in the job or in the family, as you mentioned, how to solve the problems and how to reach higher levels of knowledge of the system. I think that this is important in order to attract people, because I listened in a conference last week that people only spend between 30 seconds and 3 minutes to learn something, and to send messages in short time requires to do it very quickly and make it very attractive.
Can I have 2 more comments on that?
Yes, please.
The one thing is, when teaching cybersecurity, same as when teaching computing, experimental and theoretical issues should be interwoven like a zipper. And the second comment is teachers. We have to have well-trained, well-educated teachers if we teach computing or if we integrate cybersecurity into this. If we don't have teachers, we don't have students, we don't have education.
Now, I promised the audience we'd have a chance for questions from the floor, so to speak. We're not going to address ethical issues, which was one of the questions I circulated to the panel. Maybe that will come up in some of the later discussion. But what I'd like to do is just get each member of the panel to say some very brief sort of remarks to close this part of the discussion. And maybe you could sort of say anything that you're burning to say that you haven't said so far, but really focus on what you think the ACM ought to be doing in this area in the short-term future. Now, Wendy is so keen to speak to this, I'm going to leave her to last. So we're going to start at the other end. And Jeremy, maybe you could say a few words about it.
I'm actually going to pass. I think I've said enough.
Sorry?
I've said enough. I'm passing. Right. I'm going to turn it to Gerhard.
Right.
Well, I just want to have a word on education, and I think ACM could support it, because ACM was very good in providing advising, what should be taught. And I think in software engineering, we have not really solved the software crisis. It's still there since the Garmisch conference in 1968. We are still not capable to build hard and resilient systems. Systems are secure by design, and systems, you know, you cannot patch it for the next 20 years. So I think this is one of the issues where we could make a combined effort and make this aware, because, you know, this is our field, and this is where we have a responsibility. And I think we should look into the application side. I mean, have good research and have a good research paper doesn't help much if it doesn't materialize in a commercial product which the end user is using. Okay, so we have to look very much into industrial research and listen to the practitioners, and that's something I see a role of ACM in the near future.
Thank you. Judith.
I have summarized myself some guidelines, which I will read very quickly, okay? Cybersecurity area of knowledge should be included in computing curriculum, and of course the ACM can help with this. Cybersecurity issues should also be integrated in general study programs, prepare citizens to intelligent use of their computers and the internet. The curriculum should include special courses devoted to core issues of cybersecurity. Whether there exists special course or not, issues referring to cybersecurity should be integrated in relevant other subjects. Theoretical study should be complemented with hands-on activities. Teachers qualified to teach cybersecurity must be adequately trained.
Thank you. Thank you. Nana.
Yes, from my point of view, the opportunity of ICM in this field is to link researchers and industry, as Gerard mentioned it. I think that the opportunity is to, through the publications of ICM, it could be relatively easy to identify innovative results of the research, and if you could approach the industry, they could find industry initiatives to fund living those initiatives to real life.
Thank you. Wendy.
Well, I'm itching to say informatics for all, because when you ask what ACM can do, ACM Europe has already started a program in education jointly with Informatics Europe, another project, not program. We've called it Informatics for All, and it's picking up on the CS for All program that was successfully launched by Obama, but the huge work by the ACM and others to get that program in so that all school children are taught computing. And the Informatics for All program that ACM Europe with Informatics Europe is kicking off is about a similar idea in Europe, which of course is hard because we have lots of different countries, where we move to a situation where all children are taught to code and taught about computing. And with that, then the things that Judith's asking for, which is that has to include cybersecurity, it has to include AI. And I would say, of course I would, because I'm doing this big review on AI at the moment for the UK government, that it's very hard to disentangle AI and cybersecurity in the future. They're going to be very much associated with each other. All these things need to be spelt out and in order to fill the skills gap and, you know, to ensure that we have the workforce we need, the skilled workforce we need going forward. We need the teachers, of course, to be trained. In the short term, we need master's courses and PhD students, but absolutely. So I'd ask everybody to back and get involved with down the line the Informatics for All program, that you will see more coming out from ACM Europe over the coming months and years.
Right, thank you. So I'm going to stand up now so that I can see the forest of hands which are going to shoot up to ask our panelists some questions. You can either address questions to individual panelists or general questions to the whole panel. Thank you to the gentleman over there for being the first to put his hand up. Have we got a roving mic at all?
Well, you either got that or you've got to shout. acoustics are
Why
bad.
why
I
don't you
thought we
shout
had
it out
mic.
and we'll repeat it while they're getting the microphone?
Are we getting microphones?
Yeah, why don't you start by shouting out your question and we'll repeat it?
So, you have mixed here a lot of technical issues and individual personal issues, all that together in a cloud, but I'm not going to address that specifically. I just would like to point out that the origin of all bad things are people who penetrate, who are bad people, let's call it like this, and what usually when it
No.
No.
it usually helps that there is that if punishment is inevitable, that stops many people from bad things.
So, therefore, taking away all the technicalities and assuming that we can actually make all transactions signable and maybe blockchain, maybe something else, taking it out, what is your opinion of taking out the anonymity from the internet? So internet would become not anonymous anymore.
Bad idea.
Just let me know what you think.
Don't do it. It's important for so many different reasons that we need to have some things that can be anonymous on the internet. You look at how people use the internet to enable the Arab Spring, to enable communication from China and so on. I would not want, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but I would not want to see an internet where everything has to be accountable to somebody.
But is it anonymous at the moment? I mean, genuinely?
There's the darknet.
Is it? I mean, how anonymous is the internet these days? Seriously.
Depends how hard you try.
Well, I mean, it's not easy. It's not hard, is it, to find people's information? That's what we're talking about.
But
People
it
can
also
do it.
depends how hard you try to be anonymous.
Yeah, so we could all go and live in Tor. Right? We can all go into the dark web. We could. We could have a good dark web. We could. Right? That's where, isn't it? I mean, actually, the internet is not anonymous at all. Every time you do anything on the internet, you leave a footprint that somebody's captured, and they know who you are. So how is it anonymous?
Well,
Sorry, it isn't.
the internet nodes certainly are not anonymous because they have an IP address.
Please
but
speak
the people,
closer to the microphone.
the people who is using it, they can be anonymous because nobody knows who is the person behind that. I think it's a good proposal, but I will propose, we have been making a proposal for Horizon 2020 this summer to promote pseudonymity, a good pseudonymity system, so that the people
That's different.
So what somebody
different.
can use an anonymous identity
That's different,
that can
yeah.
be tracked through the system
Yeah.
using the blockchains that was mentioned before.
That's different, I think, to what you asked. Maybe it isn't, maybe I misinterpreted, but that is certainly something we could pursue.
Gerhard or Judith, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think
The
some anonymity is necessary. I mean, not for the bad people. You want to prevent the bad people from doing bad things. This is a difficult challenge. I don't think it's easy and we can succeed in doing it or deciding it on the spot. But for example, on an online course, you need this anonymity because you want people to be free to express what they think and what they want to ask. So anonymity is a good thing sometimes.
But are we confusing anonymity and privacy? I mean, to me, they're two different words. Maybe, maybe there's a... I think what you're talking about is privacy.
No, it's anonymity, because the students want to stay anonymous. No,
Well,
no.
yeah. Yes. But, okay, we could, it's
Okay.
maybe semantics,
Okay.
but this is important in this debate, I think. So, anyway, sorry, I'll shut up.
Gerhard, did you want to say anything? I mean, this is a very good question. It's
It is,
clearly
yeah.
animated the panel. I'm still not seeing a forest of hands, so...
I'd love views from the audience as well, and what do you think?
I'm pretty close to Jeremy's position.
Right.
So I think it could be a little bit, had we real strong encryption, then you could probably issue something and give up. Because if you can communicate on a totally secure channel, that's okay, because then you know there is somebody who can be identified, but you don't know what this person is communicating. But since we have very often weak encryption, I would not trust it for the moment. So that's why I'm pretty close to Jeremy.
Can I say, actually, Judith, there is anonymity. I'm thinking about that. Sorry, you're right.
Okay.
But
Let's move on. I mean, we've got a reception later on, and it sounds like we're getting the basis for some good conversations during that. But there are a few more questions, so can we take one from the back there,
Hi.
please?
First of all, I'd like to thank the panel for the amazing discussion that you've been having. I had actually two questions to ask. First of all I attended a seminar about autonomous car industry. And in that seminar, the whole conversation was about how easy it is to hack into any of these autonomous cars, especially the one that are driverless cars these days, that you don't need a key and you can just get into them quite easily and they're getting stolen. And another thing that was really, that was mentioned in the seminar was that we're not really doing a lot of research in this area. Do you know what could be a possible reason of why we're not looking into these, why we're not warning the public that how dangerous keyless cars can be, why we're not doing something so that we can protect these people? Because when I asked the question initially was, what can we do as a consumer to save ourselves from getting our cars hacked? The only thing is there's nothing we can do. It's just the responsibility of the people who are developing these systems when you have your entertainment system, which is linked with your car system, which is linked with the final networks, and they're not separated. So where do you think the responsibility lies?
I'm going to ask Gerhard to
I
with
like the question very much, because here we have the problem that computer science enters a new domain, and all of a sudden engineers, car engineers, are responsible for security, and they don't understand anything. And there was a famous test case where a car was attacked over the internet, and they could penetrate the control system in the car, right? So, and they used a hole that was known since the 1990s. It was even published. So the engineers never think about that it could ever attacked. So we have a new domain. I mean, this cross communication between new people that entering or that need to deal with security. Okay, we have the same in the car industry. We have the same in the medical field. Okay, because these people, they trust. They think if the device or the car just functions, nobody would ever attack it. But we have to learn how to build resilient systems, right? And I think even research-wise, we are not there. We have to really study really deep, do a deep root cause analysis. Where are the loopholes right now, and why are they there, and how can we avoid them? That will probably lead. We probably need new compilers, just with security built-in features. So I think over time we will progress. But right now, with the means we have right now, we cannot build a really secure car, which we ought to leave alone on the street.
So I'm sure, well, both Jeremy and Wendy will probably have something they want to say here.
I always have something to
say.
say.
Can we go to Wendy first, and then...
So I would say, great questions, and I'm not going to try and answer all of it, but I think this is why I'm a member of the ACM. Your second question is why I'm a member of the ACM, why you should all be members, because it's too difficult for us as individuals, individual professors, individual research groups, to have a loud enough voice to actually answer, do what you ask. You are wanting to do that in the face of the marketplace, commercial forces who want to sell, want to make money. And quite rightly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just their motives are different. And you said one of the ACM's role is bringing researchers and industry together, and I think the ACM does that brilliantly. And the group in the US ACM, the policy group, and then we've echoed that here in Europe with EU ACM that Fabrizio so brilliantly leads. These are where we do the policy statements, and the white papers that come out, the cybersecurity paper we're talking about here, there's others in the pipeline, the work that we've all signed up to the Internet of Things and Security paper that US ACM did. That's how networks help us find our voices. I always say that, I say that to the women. The reason we have women's networks is it helps us find our voice. We can talk louder together.
Thank you, and the US ACM link goes nicely to Jeremy.
Well, I actually want to slightly disagree with part of it. There is research, a fair amount of research going on that we fund in the US, not only in car security, but also heavy truck security. If you think a self-driving car is scary, think about one of those huge trucks you see driving down the road, and now it's self-driving, and there's a lot of economic motivation to do that, and we're trying to address that. But I actually want to do an audience participation survey really briefly. Raise your hand if you've heard of the trolley problem. Okay, the rest of you, your homework assignment for tomorrow is to Google the trolley problem and read about it. I'll give you the quick summary, which is that a trolley car, like the trams we have out here, is going down a track and the brakes fail. And there's a junction, and you're standing at the junction, and if you let the trolley car go straight, it's going to run into 10 people and kill them. But if you pull the lever, it'll run into one person and kill them. Do you pull the lever to shift it and kill one person actively, or let 10 people die by standing passively? There are all sorts of variations on this. Does it matter if it's children or adults? Does it matter if it's
old people?
An old person? Does it matter if it's a fat person? Does it matter? I mean, there's all these different studies, and they're really, really interesting to think about. And people who are designing self-driving cars are having to come to terms with it. Would you pay more for a self-driving car that behaves one way with respect to the trolley problem than another way? What if you're driving down the road at 100 kilometers an hour and suddenly a child runs in front of you? Should the self-driving car swerve off the road and cause you to crash into a building that will kill the driver but save that child, or should the self-driving car, because remember, a self-driving car is a self-driving car. What does the car do, and what are the ethical issues of what that car decides to do? And there's a whole lot more, lots and lots of stuff. Read about it. That's your homework assignment for tomorrow.
Manal, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I think that one of the problems
Can you move the mic closer, please?
One of the problems with the cars is that they are full of computers inside, and there is no control on the quality of the devices that are used to build those computers and those systems. I think that one of the things that has to be encouraged the industry is to incorporate the computers on the quality controls of the cars and all the devices and Internet of Things in general.
Okay, while we're waiting for the next microphone, I should have connected.
You said you had another question.
Yes,
is it
Sorry,
brief?
I had another one.
And then we'll come to one down here.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you what you think about visualization. So visualization on cybersecurity is an upcoming field right now. And what would be your advice about it? How useful would it be if we have, say, security analysts that are can visualize things well enough so we can figure out when attacks are happening, we can figure out how to deal with them in a matter of minutes and seconds rather than looking at log records and textual data and going through that. What would you say is your opinion about, say, the advantages or the disadvantages of using that kind of system?
Who wants to pick that up first?
If someone else would like to.
Manal.
Yes, I think that visualization is very important for one of the things I mentioned before, is because it allows the researchers to analyze the behavior of the incidents and how they will evolve, and from this evolution the intelligence systems can explore the future movements. In tracking cyber incidents, the people, the police and cybersecurity people has identified that there are some patterns on the behavior of the organized crime. They move around following some patterns, and then if we discover this, we can catch them in the next step.
Jeremy first and then Gerhard.
So just a brief thought about that is that we need to make sure that we're visualizing something that's useful. A lot of the visualizations are visualizing things we already know how to solve. I mean, if I can see the attack happening in real time, would it be better to invest the resources in preventing that attack if we know so clearly what it is, as compared to building something pretty that lets us see it? Because a lot of the visualizations really just do that. They let you see the attack happening instead of solving it.
Okay. Gerhard, you wanted to?
I think a question related to visualization is metrics, and I think we ought to do more research in this area. So for instance, how to measure how resilient a system is, and what can you do? So how can you compare a system, you make a modification and measure it and see the attacker has a harder time now because, and I can even prove it with a measurement. So that's probably some research task which I think would be very important just to see where we're heading.
Judith or Wendy?
No.
Okay, so there's a question here from Oliver.
Switch on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think if there's one takeaway, if there's one takeaway from this discussion, it's how interwoven the problems are. So it's there. We talked about privacy, security, and safety, and how this intersects with society, and I think this is not going away. I think that will keep us busy, but. As I remember, this panel was about cybersecurity, so I want to refocus it a bit, just with an open question, if you like. Where do you see the future of security, or the future challenges, and how can ACM play a role to help here, solving these problems?
So really, we're almost at the end of this session, so you can take this as a kind of closing remark. We'll go through the panel.
Don't start with me.
And I've just been told we're not starting with my predecessor as chair of... so we'll start with Jeremy and come the other way.
I want a minute to think.
Yes.
I'm going to pass the ball to someone else.
Yes, you are, so it's hard.
It's a tricky question, but I think there are three notions we have to keep in mind. First of all, the notion of trust, because that's what plays an important role in cybersecurity. How trustful are these systems we are using? Because we are giving our data to this do we trust them? Data is the new oil. It's very, making money with the data that are being collected. So you need to trust the instance you're donating your data. There are others, risk and awareness. So I think that's where ACM could come up. We have to teach the people in training risk awareness. Think in worst case scenarios, because these scenarios might be there sooner than we think or like to think.
Any of the other panel members have time to think? Jeremy, you look like you...
Okay, I'll come back to what I said earlier, which was I think we need to be more interdisciplinary, and we as ACM need to be building bridges to other societies and helping them understand how cybersecurity is important to their fields. So the mechanical engineers and the civil engineers and the physicists and the astronomers and everybody else know that they can turn to ACM to get help in figuring out how they train their next generation of scientists, so that we're not trying to push the rock uphill all by ourselves, but that we're working with our peer organizations to solve these problems.
You know, there is this saying, if you can't foresee the future, invent it. I must admit that just now I don't know how to invent it, and I leave it open.
Oh, do you want to go first? Or I'm ready, but you... So I think I was trying to think how to answer it in German. The interdisciplinary thing is key. My whole life is interdisciplinary. You know, the whole web science thing I do is computer science meets social science meets psychology meets economics, and you know, the ACM backs the Web Science Conference, and it's really, really hard to get different disciplines to come together at a conference. It's just so hard because our cultures are so different. And it's like constant vigilance, and you have to, I mean, you said you don't know how to reinvent the future. You know, even when we're talking about doing stuff where we have this informatics for all and, you know, curricula to get everybody into computing, we have no way of teaching in the interdisciplinary and at any level. And universities, I mean, with our web science PhD, we have computer science and social scientists together. They've done degrees in those areas, and we're trying to make them do a PhD in interdisciplinary. As we teach them, so we teach the computer scientists about social science and the social science about computer science in the same classroom. And that we've learned how to do it over the last 8 years, but it's a constant struggle to get it right. And then the journals you send your papers to and the government that gives you the money measures you in a completely different, you're measured by disciplines. So breaking those barriers down, and this will help with the diversity. If we can break the discipline barriers down, it will help with the diversity. I don't know if that gone off track a bit, but it's not easy.
No. So I think, yeah, that's a very good point. Summarize a little bit what has been said. Trust, risk, and awareness are very important. But if we have seen recently how easy or how difficult is to make people understand what is truth and what is fake in real life, and in internet is even worse because the perception, it's easier to make fake things to look real. One of the challenges from the societal point of view is to identify how can we send messages to the users telling them what they have to trust and what not. We're working in a project funded by Horizon 2020, trying to identify and do the metrics and visualize the results of this analysis so that we can encourage people to easily recognize what can be trusted and what not. And also, from the point of view of what was mentioned before, it depends on what is your role in front of the network, in front of the systems. If you are playing with an anonymous or pseudonymous role, maybe you can take more risks because you are not risking your own identity. But if you are playing with your personal identity, then you have to be more careful. If you are acting as a customer of a bank, you have to be more careful than if you are acting as
somebody in a social network. Right. Okay, well, we have a saying, that time flies when you're enjoying yourselves, and 90 minutes has flown by. You can interpret that as you wish. But there are a couple of really big issues that we haven't had time to discuss fully to the extent they deserve over the last 90 minutes. Ethics came up in some of the opening statements, and we haven't really spoken very much about ethical issues, although we've hinted at a few of them. I think we've just started maybe a potential interesting discussion about understanding and communicating risk, which is really at the heart of part of the awareness campaign that we've talked quite a bit about. Just a few of the key points maybe that come out of what all of the panelists have said to us, which are worth re-emphasizing. First and foremost maybe is that cyber isn't just about technology. In fact, technology is really only a small part of it. It's really about people too, and that maybe no single discipline can therefore hope to have all of the solutions. And I think Jeremy made some very wise remarks, both in his opening statements and more recently, about the need for us to really reach out to other disciplines, not just the obvious ones like the psychologists and economists, but also other social sciences. And if we're going to really succeed, we need to have them alongside us. Informatics for All has featured a lot and should be a cornerstone of what we're trying to do going forward about awareness. And just to finish on some key technology that came out in the discussion, IoT, autonomy, the interactions between safety and security, these are all big issues. We haven't had time to give them their full desserts, but we are, after we've had another presentation about the fellows, I think we're going to have a reception and hopefully some conversations will carry on, maybe not as late into the evening as some of our conversations carried on last night. Because I think some of us are getting slightly older and need to have our bed rest. But
no,
anyway,
I'll make the bar tonight. I was promised a dry martini.
Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and I hope you will join me in thanking the panelists for entertaining us for the last 90 minutes. Thank you.
Well chaired. Well chaired. Anyone from Southampton here? Come down for a photo now. Oh, ACM chocolates. I didn't know ACM made chocolate. Oh. Thank you. I thought there was a bit of a break now. Sorry. Right, let's pull us all back together then. So we now move into our evening reception where we're celebrating European computer science in Europe. And I have a script here, but I always go off script, so we'll see how we go. So, I'm going to say it's wonderful to be here in this beautiful city of Barcelona. It is, but I haven't seen much of it yet. I've been mostly in rooms without windows, but I do know that out there is a beautiful city called Barcelona, and I have been here many times, both as a tourist and at meetings, and have always had the most wonderful time. And of course it is a city that many, many people come to visit. And so it's especially poignant to be here after that tragic attack. We can't start this without mentioning it, the attack on the Las Ramblas of just a few weeks ago. So, if we could just reflect on that for a minute to remember the people who suffered so badly in that attack. There were 16 people who lost their lives and more than 120 were injured. And I come from London. London has had a lot of, over the years, many of these types of attacks. And life goes on because it has to, otherwise they've won. So please excuse my Catalan when I say, in solidarity with the people of Barcelona and the world, no tinc por. Which I'm told, I know, is I'm not afraid. we're all here, we're absolutely, and we never, ever questioned the fact that we were coming to Barcelona. Actually, what got us more were the strikes at the airport. But they didn't happen this week, so that's fine. So, welcome everybody to the University of Barcelona and the ACM Europe Conference 2017 and our ACM Fellows celebration. On behalf of ACM Europe Council, welcome everyone. I hope you had an opportunity to hear Silvio Micali's talk about distributed lectures. He was the 2012 ACM Turing Laureate, so the highest, the Nobel Prize of our profession. And of course, you've just heard the Cybersecurity Panel discussion. The aim of this conference was to talk about the buzzy, hot topics in the field and how we as a community can contribute to the well-being of humanity. That's our intent with the ACM Europe Conference, is to provide a European venue for discussion of vital topics in computing research and practice. And we've accomplished this by delivering high-quality programming, and by encouraging ACM Women Europe, yay! They're at the back there heckling. Where's Rayanne? Ah, gone? I don't know. Anyway, ACM Women Europe, Eurolab 4, HPC. I don't know if they want to heckle themselves. High Peak, where's Per and his team? And I never know how to pronounce this. EXDCI, is that how you pronounce it? Because when I was looking at this earlier, I was thinking, you could say ecstasy in English, that could be ecstasy. Anyway, right, XDCI. To co-locate, and we really appreciate you co-locating your events with our events so that we could bring everyone together at this conference. By bringing together individuals and their expertise in one place, our hope is to create a new spirit of networking and thus a synergy that will make a substantial contribution to the scope and quality of computing research and practice in Europe. This event, however, is but one aspect of the vision we have for the ACM Europe Council, and I'm speaking to you today in my role as past chair of the ACM Europe Council. The chair of the Cybersecurity Panel, as he said, had the lucky, what's the word I want? He's very lucky to have become the current ACM Europe Council Chair. He became that yesterday. So, Professor Chris Hankin, congratulations on taking over from me. I also, of course, took over the first chair of ACM Europe Council, was Fabrizio Gagliardi. And so, you have two big, no, I won't say anymore, shoes to fill, I was going to say. Fabrizio, of course, I'm going to talk about him later, I think. Yes, I am. So we look forward to Chris's leadership of the council. And I think that the key thing for me is it's now, this was a twinkle in our eyes about 10 years ago, and now we have an established council, established leaders, an established program, and we can accomplish more from that. So, what have we done? First, we've created a committee focused on improving the exchange of ideas and raising awareness among the public and European decision makers about important technical, educational and social issues related to computing. This is where I'm going to talk about Fabrizio. Under the leadership of ACM Europe Council, former chair, Fabrizio Gagliardi, who's the ACM Europe Public Policy Committee, or EUACM for short, does an amazing job promoting public policy and public understanding of a broad range of issues at the intersection of technology and policy. I'm talking too fast. I also want to personally thank Fabrizio for the amazing, I know Matteo thanked him earlier, but for the amazing amount of work he's put into organising this conference. Okay, so thank you again, Fabrizio. He puts the same energy into EUACM. It would not be what it is without his energy. And he has a day job, doesn't he? Somewhere along the line he has a day job. Yeah, he does something for Matteo, I don't know what, yeah. Second, we aim to increase the visibility and participation of Europeans in activities and senior volunteer positions in ACM. And third, we intend to promote an increase of Europeans to advance ACM member grades and increase the number of their nominations for ACM awards. And finally, we will raise the level and visibility of ACM activities across Europe. And how do we do that? Expanding the number of ACM European chapters, encouraging more European participation in all dimensions of the ACM, and conducting a wide range of high-quality conferences, such as the one we are participating in the evening. This ACM Europe Conference, however, is just the beginning. We fully expect events such as this to grow in statures in the years to come and to become significant milestones on our quest to achieving our vision for the ACM Europe Council. My fellow council members and I are so pleased that all of you could be with us this evening to begin that journey. To tell you more about the conference is our overall chair of the conference, Matteo Valero, Director of the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And Matteo, thanks to you as well. It's big, yeah, you see, that's what threw me.
Thank you, Wendy, for your kind words about Barcelona. We really need that. Thank you very much. As Wendy said, this conference is very important for us, for ACM Europe. The quality of this year's conference, I think, is very good. We just passed two of the session, and everybody here, I am very sure, enjoy about the quality of the presentation. I think that Silvio is unique, using mathematics to apply to the cryptography. So we really enjoy that. Continue in this line. We need you just to avoid bad things in the internet or anything. Okay, so continue. Thank you for coming. And also, I mean, I think that I enjoy also the panel with the panelists. They really contribute to us, to our knowledge about what are the topics with the cybersecurity, okay? Please join us tomorrow. Tomorrow we had two sessions also. First of all, a very good talk by Professor Patrick Jellick, who is also, she got the Kennedy Award last year and also the ACM Athena Lecture Award recipient. She will give a talk about application of exascale computing. After this talk, we are going to have another panel session about high-performance computing in the future. So we are going to have several experts talking about that. As when they say, we are very happy with the people who collocate their activities with us. I mean, I don't know if I need to repeat all these people, okay? But it was very good for us to have the ACM Europe celebration of women in computing. It was a scientific event as well as a networking event aimed at exploring career opportunities for women in computer science and related discipline. Okay. We had the final of the project, this EXDCI, so Sergi, thank you for that, okay. And then the Eurolab SPC, thank you, Per, for bringing your organization with us. And also the High Peak, Kuhn, I don't know where is Kuhn, thank you once more for your contribution to the knowledge in Europe, okay. Once more, I would like to thank to all the program committee for this conference, for putting together this excellent program of panelists and speakers, and especially once more, Fabrizio, you make my life easy. So thank you. Probably not for the rest, but for me, I really appreciate that you do a real and incredible work. And again, to all the ACM, your staff, the ACM, Pat, you know, you are unique. I always say that. You know, the president of ACM changed, moved, but she's always there, taking care of us. So thank you, and continue many, many years. We need you, okay? And now, as we say, and finishing, now we are going to acknowledge our ACM Europe Fellows. And I think no better person than our president, Vicky to do the presentation of our fellows. Let me tell you that Vicky was also inducted fellow in 2004 for contribution to computing technologies for people with disability. Thank you very much, Vicky, for coming to Barcelona, please. Where is that? Yeah. Fabricio went to fix. We had some very nice picture of the fellow. You have here. Yeah.
So, someone's getting the slides? And then, do I advance the slides, or does somebody? Oh, okay. Are they up there? Oh, success. Okay. So, Wendy? I'm seeing Wendy. Matea, thank you. Okay. So here's where I come in. All right. So thank you for that. As many of you know, ACM established the Fellows Program in 1993 to recognize and honor outstanding ACM members for their achievements in computer science and information technology and their significant contributions to ACM. It's these distinguished colleagues that we look to for guidance and leadership as computing evolves. And this is where the Fellows Program comes in. It rewards achievement in computing, but it also infuses our community with advisors, teachers, and mentors. Our ACM Fellows are role models who our members aspire to become. Their accomplishments give our organization a highly respected and heeded voice, a voice that we heard about earlier tonight from Wendy. As we honor them, our community becomes stronger and more able to fulfill our mission of advancing computing. So we'd like to recognize the ACM Fellows who are with us this evening, and when I call your name, will the Fellows please come up and stand up here on the stage? Oh, is he? Yeah, I have the clicker. Okay. First, Ricardo Baeza-Yates. Ricardo, are you here? Okay. So these are people who are attending the conference but maybe are not here right at the moment. But Ricardo. Luca Benini, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, ETH Zurich, inducted in 2016 for contributions to the design of low-power multiprocessor systems. Okay, it's not the same as as what I have here. All right, Giuseppe Di Giacomo, you here? Oh, okay, great, thanks. For some reason the slide's not here. Sapienza University of Rome, inducted 2015 for contributions to description logic, data management, and verification of data-driven processes. That's not you? Okay. Well, I've read it. Okay. Babek Felsafi? That's you. Okay, you were just preparing. Thank you. Okay. Yay. Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lausanne, inducted 2015 for contributions to multiprocessor and memory architecture design and evaluation. Wendy Hall. Oh, there you are. I couldn't see you behind the podium. Okay. University of Southampton, inducted 2010 for contributions to the semantic web and web science and for service to ACM and the international computing community. Matthias Strake, RWTH, Hankin University, inducted 2013 for contributions to conceptual modeling, requirements for engineering, metadata management, and computer science leadership in Germany. Okay. James Laris, Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne, EPFL, inducted 2006 for contributions to programming languages, compilers, and computer architecture. Vito Litving? No? Oh, great, okay. Paris Dauphine University, inducted 2001 for pioneering research in dynamic storage structures, scalable distributed file structures, and multi-databases. I'm not being very good with my slides, sorry about that. Satoshi Matsuoka, Tokyo Institute of Technology. Inducted 2011 for contributions to the design of high-performance computers. Ron Parrott, University of Oxford, inducted 1997. So being inducted in 1997, Ron, you seem to be the longest standing fellow that we have here. Yes. Inducted for fundamental contributions to the design and implementation of parallel languages and for being active in formulating IT policy at the UK and European levels. John Richards, IBM Research, inducted 1998, the second longest standing fellow that we have here, for contributions to user-centered software design and for outstanding service to the programming languages community. Bobby Schnabel, Association for Computing Machinery, inducted in 2010 for leadership of the computing community in education and diversity and for contributions to numerical optimization. Okay, Ricardo is here. Had you started the reception early? So let me go back to reading Ricardo's. Ricardo Bahisa Yates, Intent, inducted in 2009 for contributions to the development of algorithms and information retrieval techniques. Ricardo? Okay, Per Stenström, Chalmers University of Technology. Yeah. Inducted in 2008 for contributions to the design of high-performance memory systems. Okay. Mateo Valero, Barcelona Supercomputing Center, inducted 2002 for contributions to the design of vector, superscalar, VLIW architectures, and technical leadership. Reinhard Wilhelm, Professor Emeritus, Saarland University, inducted in 2000 for important contributions to the field of compilers, particularly code generator generators and program analysis, and for outstanding service as a scientific director of Schloss Dagstuhl. Catherine Yellick, University of California, Berkeley, inducted 2012 for contributions to parallel languages that improve programmer productivity. Catherine? No? You will be here. She's talking. Okay. Did I miss anyone? Are there any fellows in the audience who I did not call out? Because I don't want to leave anyone out if you're here. Oh, Silvio. Well, come on up. Silvio Micali, who we all know, right? Needs no introduction. so congratulations to everyone. Again, this is a technical leadership of ACM, and it's an honor to have you all standing together on stage. Are the photographers taking photos?
Oh, I see, we're still doing a photo, are we? Oh, all right.
Okay, so just in closing, I want to remind everyone that we have many colleagues here in Europe who would be due the accomplishments of an ACM, the merits of an ACM advanced membership grade, so this includes senior member, distinguished member, and fellow. And I'd like to call on all of you here to think of colleagues of yours who might be worthy of these awards and do these nominations, because people can't get elected if they're not nominated. So it's up to all of us to do the nominations for our colleagues here in Europe. Also, as Wendy mentioned earlier, one effective way that all of us can raise the profile of European contributions to computing is to take advantage of the ACM Awards program. There's a lot of different awards. We all know about the major awards that we have for like lifetime contributions. So the Turing Award, Silvio, for example, and thank you for your provocative talk earlier today. But there's many other types of awards that ACM has. For example, there's mid-level and early career level awards. There's also awards for certain types of contributions. So there's awards for outstanding educator, for software systems awards, award for humanitarian contributions, contributions to ACM. We also have student awards, such as Outstanding Dissertation Award. So think of these other level awards, and I encourage all of you to make yourselves more aware of the ACM Awards program and to nominate your colleagues in Europe, okay? Help raise the visibility of Europe within ACM. Thank you. And now it is time for the reception. Thank you all. Yes.